On Father's Day, my son and daughter-in-law sent me a gift box. My wife looked at it and said, "Don't open it." I didn't understand what she meant, and when I looked inside, my heart nearly stopped. Not because of what was in it, but because of what it meant. 20 minutes later, the police were at my door. Before I could explain, everything spiraled out of control. And the most chilling part was this: someone had planned all of it in advance. And in that moment, I realized I had been pushed into a game I didn't even know the rules to. I'm really grateful you're here with me. Before we go on, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I'd love to see how far this story reaches. Also, please note, parts of this story are dramatized for storytelling and learning purposes. Any similarities to real people or places are purely coincidental, but the message behind it is what truly matters. The box showed up on Father's Day morning, which should have been my first clue. I'd been awake since 5:30. Old habits from 40 years of bridge work don't quit just because you retire. The June sun was already warming the cedar shingles of our craftsman when I stepped onto the porch with my coffee. Bellevue mornings in early summer smell like cut grass and Douglas fir. Quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you think you've earned something. Then I saw it. A cardboard box maybe a foot square sitting dead center on the welcome mat. No delivery truck had pulled up. No doorbell had rung. Just a box, plain brown, with my name printed in block letters across the top, Warren Hayes. I'm 68. I've seen enough to know when something doesn't fit. I set my coffee on the porch railing and crouched down, knees creaking, but still functional. The return address caught my eye: King County Department of Health, Seattle, Washington. Official looking. Except I'd worked with King County for 30 years. This wasn't one of their labels. Then I saw the handwriting on the side panel, small, slanted, too neat. I'd seen it before on grocery lists on birthday cards Tyler brought home. Amber's handwriting. My daughter-in-law. Warren. I turned. Ellie stood in the doorway, still in her bathrobe, gray hair loose around her shoulders. She's 65, 5 years younger than me, but she's always been sharper. You don't survive 45 years of marriage without learning when your wife's radar is pinging. "What is it?" she asked. "A package," I said. "No label, just showed up." She stepped closer. Ellie built this house with me back in '79. Well, she didn't swing the hammer, but she was there every day after work, handing me nails, reminding me to eat. She knows every board, every corner. She knows when something's wrong. She looked at the box, then at me. "Don't open it," she said. I should have listened, but I'm a structural engineer. Spent 4 decades analyzing stress points, load capacities, failure modes. My whole career was built on one question: what happens when this breaks? The box wasn't taped shut. It was sealed with clear packing tape, edges perfectly aligned. Professional. The corners were reinforced. Heavy duty. Overkill for something that weighed maybe 5 pounds. "Ellie," I said slowly, "did Tyler mention sending anything? Our son lives 15 minutes away. Works in hospital supply chain management. Good at logistics. Terrible at surprises." "No," Ellie said. Her voice had that edge it gets when she's worried. "Warren, I mean it. Don't touch it." I pulled my phone from my pocket. "I'm calling 911. The dispatcher was calm. I gave her the address described. The box explained the fake return label. She asked if I'd moved it. I said no. She told me to clear the area and wait for the bomb squad. Bomb squad. 20 minutes later, a King County Sheriff's cruiser rolled up, lights flashing. A white van followed, explosive ordnance disposal stenciled on the side. 2 officers stepped out. The older one, a guy in his 50s with gray stubble, walked up the driveway. "Mr. Hayes," he said. "That's me." "I'm Deputy Carson. You made the call?" I nodded. "The box showed up this morning. No one delivered it. Return address is fake." Carson glanced at the porch. "You touch it." "No." "Good." He turned to his partner. "Miller, get the tape." The bomb squad suited up, thick padded gear helmets. One of them knelt beside the box, ran a scanner over it, then sliced the tape. Slowly, the way you'd defuse a grenade. The flaps lifted, and my life ended. Inside, jewelry worth $60,000. A diamond ring, pearl necklace, gold Rolex, emerald earrings. Every piece had a small red sticker, "Stolen." Beneath the jewelry, a professional lockpick set, glass cutter, latex gloves, pry bar, penlight flashlight. And spread across the bottom, 6 glossy photos of houses, my neighbors' houses. Each photo had a handwritten note taped to the back: best entry rear sliding door. Security system ADT code, likely 1, 2, 3, 4. Occupants elderly couple, hard of hearing. And on top of everything, a sheet of notebook paper. A list, handwritten, in my handwriting. Next targets. 842 Evergreen Circle Hayes Residence. 1205 Maple Lane Hendersons. 634 Laurel Drive. Martins. Except I didn't write it. Deputy Carson stepped forward. Mr. Hayes, you want to explain this? I couldn't speak. Sir, we've been investigating a string of burglaries in this area for 3 months. 7 homes, over $400,000 in losses, all high-end neighborhoods, all victims over 65. He gestured at the box. This looks like a perpetrator's toolkit. I started. Your handwriting is on that list. It's not my handwriting, I said, but my voice cracked because it looked like my handwriting, the slant, the spacing, the way I always capitalized the first letter of every word in lists. Someone had practiced. Ellie grabbed my arm. Warren didn't do this. Carson's partner was on his radio. Requesting K-9 unit, suspect premises possible evidence. This is my home, I said. Carson's face didn't change. Sir, I need you to step back. And that's when I heard the tires on the driveway. A silver SUV pulled up fast. The door swung open and out stepped Amber, my daughter-in-law, 36 years old, blonde hair, always dressed like she was about to be photographed. She'd married my son Tyler 4 years ago. I'd never liked her too smooth, too quick, with compliments that didn't reach her eyes. Right behind her, Tyler climbed out. 37, my only son, wrinkled polo, looking like he hadn't slept. Amber ran up the driveway, her voice cracking. Oh my God, what's happening? Warren, are you okay? She grabbed Tyler's arm. We saw the police cars. What's going on? Her eyes flicked to the box. And for just a second, maybe a heartbeat, I saw it. A flash of something cold. Then it was gone, replaced by wide-eyed shock. What is that? She gasped, pointing at the jewelry. Warren, what have you done? Deputy Carson turned to her. Ma'am, do you live here? No, but this is my father-in-law. She looked at Tyler. Honey, what is all this? Tyler stared at the box, his face pale. Dad, I opened my mouth, but no words came, because I saw it now. The setup, the fake return address, the handwriting, the timing, Father's Day, when Amber knew Tyler would insist on visiting. The call to 911 before I could open it myself, so the bomb squad would be witnesses. This wasn't random. This was planned. Carson was taking notes. Miller was calling in the K-9 unit. The bomb squad was photographing the evidence. And Amber stood there with her hand on Tyler's shoulder, her face a perfect mask of concern. But I knew. 45 years ago, I met Ellie at a construction site. I was 24, fresh out of college, the poor kid from Tacoma, with student debt and a used truck. She was 21, the boss's daughter. Her father made it clear I wasn't good enough. But Ellie didn't care. We got married in a courthouse. Her father cut her off. We lived cheap, saved every dollar. When we found out she was pregnant with Tyler, I made her a promise. I'll build you a house. So I did. Bought a lot in Bellevue when it was still cheap. Spent weekends framing wiring plumbing. Ellie was there every step, 7 months pregnant, handing me tools. That house, this house, was our proof. Proof that we could build something that lasted. And now someone was trying to take it. The K-9 unit pulled up a white van with a German Shepherd in the back. The handler, a young guy with a crew cut, opened the cage. The dog hit the ground nose, already working. Deputy Carson looked at me. Sir, we're going to need to search the premises. I nodded. Because what else could I do? The dog trotted up the porch steps, sniffing the box, the jewelry, the tools. Then it turned and walked straight into my house. The house I'd built with my own hands suddenly felt like a crime scene. I followed the K-9 handler inside my boots, heavy on the hardwood I'd refinished last spring. The dog, a German Shepherd named Axel, according to the patch on the handler's vest, moved fast. Nose low, sweeping left to right across the living room. Past the stone fireplace Ellie and I had rebuilt in 2003. Past the bookshelf where Tyler's Little League trophy still sat dusty and forgotten. Deputy Carson was right behind me. Sir, please stay by the door. I stopped. My house. My rules. Except they weren't my rules anymore. Axel circled the couch, sniffed the coffee table, then bolted for the staircase. The handler jogged after him. He's got something. Carson looked at me. What's upstairs? The bedrooms, I said. 2 of them, master's on the left. Anyone else live here? Just me and my wife. He nodded and climbed the stairs. Miller followed, hand resting on his belt. I stayed where I was, watching them disappear into the second floor of the house I'd framed with 2x6s in sweat. Ellie stood in the doorway behind me, her hand on my shoulder. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. 30 seconds later, Axel barked. Not the playful bark of a dog chasing a squirrel. The sharp, trained bark of a dog that had found what it was looking for. "Carson," the handler shouted. "Bedroom?" I started up the stairs. Carson blocked me halfway. "Mr. Hayes, you need to wait downstairs." "That's my bedroom?" "Which is why you need to wait downstairs." His voice was firm, but not unkind. "We'll call you up in a minute." I went back down, stood next to Ellie, watched the ceiling, listening to footsteps creak above us. 45 years ago, I'd nailed down every joist in that floor. I knew which boards squeaked. Right now, they were all squeaking. 5 minutes later, Carson came down the stairs holding a black plastic bag. A garbage bag. Industrial strength, the kind you use for yard work. Except it wasn't full of leaves. It was full of cash. "Mr. Hayes," Carson said slowly, "can you explain why there's $75,000 in cash hidden under your mattress?" I stared at the bag, at the bundles of hundreds visible through the thin plastic, at the rubber bands holding them together, at the hasty way it had been tied shut. "I don't know," I said. "You don't know. I've never seen that before." Carson set the bag on the kitchen counter. "You're telling me you have no knowledge of $75,000 hidden in your own bedroom?" "That's what I'm telling you." He pulled out a notebook. "When's the last time you changed your sheets?" 2 days ago, Ellie said. Her voice was steady, but I could hear the crack underneath. "Saturday morning, I stripped the bed, vacuumed under it, flipped the mattress. There was nothing there." Carson wrote that down. "And since then, we slept there last night," I said. "Both of us. If there was $75,000 under the mattress, we would have noticed." "Would you—" I opened my mouth, closed it, because he was right. If someone had slipped a flat bag of cash under a king-size mattress while we were out, say, yesterday afternoon when we'd driven to the grocery store, would we have felt it? Would I have noticed the extra inch of height, the faint crinkle of plastic? Maybe not. And then I smelled it. Faint, chemical, sweet in a way that made my head hurt. Perfume. I'd smelled it before, every time Amber visited, every time she hugged Ellie at the door and left that cloying scent on my wife's sweater. Cheap, overpowering. The kind of fragrance they sold at department stores in bottles shaped like stilettos. Obsidian night. Amber's perfume. "She was in our bedroom," I said. Carson looked up. "Who?" "Amber, my daughter-in-law. She was upstairs." "When—" I thought back. "Yesterday. We'd gone to the store around 3, got back around 4:30. Amber had been here when we returned, said she'd stop by to drop off a Father's Day card. Ellie had invited her in for coffee. They'd sat in the kitchen for 20 minutes. I'd been outside checking the fence." "Yesterday," I said. "She was here yesterday." "And you think she went into your bedroom?" "I know she did. I can smell her perfume." Carson exchanged a glance with Miller. "Sir, with all due respect, a lot of people wear perfume." "Not like this." I pointed at the stairs. "Go up there. You'll smell it. It's all over the room." He didn't move. "Please," Ellie said quietly. "Just check." Carson sighed, then climbed the stairs again. I heard him open the bedroom door. Pause. Then his radio crackled. "Miller, come up here." Miller jogged upstairs. A minute later, Carson came back down. "There's a scent," he admitted. "Could be perfume, could be air freshener, could be anything." "It's Amber," I said. Even if it is," Carson said, "that doesn't prove she put the money there." Then who did—" He didn't answer. Outside, more vehicles were arriving. A black sedan pulled into the driveway. The door opened, and out stepped a man in a gray suit, 64 silver hair, combed back, wire-rimmed glasses. He moved like someone who'd spent a lifetime in courtrooms and wasn't impressed by much. Marcus Dalton, my lawyer. I'd called him 15 years ago when Ellie and I set up our estate planning. He'd handled our wills, our trust, our power of attorney paperwork. He was expensive, thorough, and the kind of guy who could recite case law in his sleep. He walked up to the porch, briefcase in hand, and looked at Deputy Carson. "I'm Marcus Dalton, Mr. Hayes' attorney." He handed Carson a business card. "I understand you're conducting a search." "We are." "On what grounds?" "Probable cause. Evidence of burglary tools and stolen property was found on the premises." Marcus glanced at me. His expression didn't change, but I saw the question in his eyes. "Did you do this?" I shook my head. He turned back to Carson. "Has my client been read his rights?" "Not yet." "Then he won't be answering any questions." Marcus looked at me. "Warren, don't say anything. Not a word. I didn't. Not a word. I shut my mouth. Carson pulled out his handcuffs. Warren Hayes, you're under arrest for possession of stolen property and conspiracy to commit burglary. You have the right to remain silent. The words blurred. I heard them. I'd heard them 1,000 times on TV, but they didn't feel real. Not here, not in my driveway. Not with Ellie standing 6 feet away, her hand over her mouth, tears running down her face. Carson turned me around, cuffed my wrists behind my back. The metal was cold, tight. I felt the click of the lock, heard the scrape of the chain. Across the street, the Hendersons stood on their porch. Jim Henderson, 70, retired school teacher. The guy I'd helped fix his deck last summer had his arms crossed. His wife, Sarah, stood beside him, hand over her mouth, staring. They'd known me for 15 years. And now they were watching me get arrested. Carson walked me toward the cruiser. Miller opened the back door. I ducked my head, slid into the seat. The vinyl was hot, sticky. It smelled like sweat and regret. Through the window, I saw Ellie on the porch, Marcus's hand on her shoulder. She wasn't crying anymore, just staring, her face pale, her jaw set. I'd seen that look before. The day her father told her she couldn't marry me. The day we found out Tyler was sick when he was 3. The day I told her I was retiring early because my back couldn't take another season. It was the look that said, we'll survive this. I wasn't sure we would. The cruiser door slammed shut. Miller climbed into the driver's seat. Carson sat beside him. The engine started. And that's when I heard it. Through the open window, just a crack just enough, I heard Amber's voice. She was standing next to Tyler by the SUV, her hand on his arm, her face tilted up toward his. Her voice was low, barely a whisper, but I caught the words. What do we do now? Tyler's answer was too quiet to hear, but Amber smiled, and the cruiser pulled away. By Monday morning, I'd spent 36 hours in a cell that measured 8 by 10. I didn't sleep, couldn't. The fluorescent lights in the holding cell never turned off, and every hour someone banged on the bars to check I was still breathing. The mattress was 2 inches of foam over a steel slab. My back, 40 years of bridge work, 2 herniated discs, a knee that clicked when I stood, reminded me I wasn't 24 anymore. But the worst part wasn't the cell. It was the silence. No phone call from Tyler. No message from Amber. Just me. The hum of the lights and the weight of $75,000 I'd never seen before. At 8 a.m., a guard led me down a cinder-block hallway to the interrogation room. Metal table, 2 chairs, a clock on the wall that ticked too loud. Detective Reynolds sat across from me, mid-40s. Cheap tie, coffee-stained shirt, reading glasses perched on his nose. The kind of cop who'd been doing this long enough to spot a liar at 20 paces. He had a folder in front of him, thick full of photos, reports, evidence logs. He didn't open it. Mr. Hayes, he said, you want to tell me about the money? I didn't answer. Marcus had been clear. Don't say anything. Not a word. But Reynolds wasn't asking. He was waiting. So I broke the rule. I didn't put it there, I said. Reynolds raised an eyebrow. Who did? I don't know. You don't know who put $75,000 under your mattress. That's right. He leaned back, tapped his pen on the table. Mr. Hayes, I've been a detective for 20 years. I've heard a lot of stories. I don't know is usually the first one. It's the truth. Then help me understand. He opened the folder, pulled out a photo. The black garbage bag, the bundles of cash, the rubber bands. This was found in your bedroom, your house, your mattress. You're telling me you have no idea how it got there? None. When's the last time you checked under your mattress? We rammed. I thought about it. Saturday, my wife changed the sheets. She vacuums under the bed every week. There was nothing there. Reynolds wrote that down. So between Saturday morning and Sunday afternoon, someone broke into your house, hid $75,000 under your mattress, and left without a trace. Yes. Why, to frame me. He set his pen down. Mr. Hayes, with all due respect, that's a pretty elaborate frame job. It is. Who would do that? I hesitated. Because saying it out loud, accusing my daughter-in-law, my son's wife, the woman who called me Dad at Thanksgiving, felt like crossing a line I couldn't uncross. But I'd already crossed it. Amber, I said. My daughter-in-law. Reynolds didn't blink. Why would she do that? I don't know. You don't know? Not yet. He studied me for a long moment. Then he pulled out another photo, the box from the porch, the jewelry, the tools, the handwritten list. Let's talk about this, he said. The lockpick set, the glass cutter, the stolen jewelry, all found in a package addressed to you, on your porch, on Father's Day. I didn't put it there. But you called 911. Because it was suspicious. Or, Reynolds said slowly, because you panicked, because you realized the package had been discovered before you could dispose of it. I stared at him. You think I called the bomb squad on myself? Stranger things have happened. I'm 68 years old. I'm a retired civil engineer. I've lived in this neighborhood for 45 years. I leaned forward. Do you really think I'm running a burglary ring? Reynolds didn't answer. I took a breath, forced myself to think like an engineer, like someone who'd spent a lifetime analyzing problems, finding flaws, identifying failure points. The evidence doesn't make sense, I said. Reynolds looked up. How so? The garbage bag, the one with the cash. I gestured at the photo. It's clean, no dust, no dirt, no fingerprints except yours and the K9 handlers. So my house is 100 years old. Everything has dust. The floors, the baseboards, the furniture. If that bag had been under my mattress for more than a day, it would have had dust on it. But it didn't. Reynolds frowned. Go on? The tools in the box. The lockpick set, the glass cutter, the pry bar. They're brand new. No scratches, no oil residue, no wear marks. I pointed at the photo. If someone had used those tools to break into 7 houses over 3 months, they'd show signs of use. But they don't. He wrote that down. And the labels, I said. The red stolen stickers on the jewelry. They were printed on a color laser printer. High resolution. Professional quality. And I don't own a color laser printer. I have an old inkjet in my office. Black and white. It's 15 years old and jams every other page. I met his eyes. Whoever set this up had access to better equipment than I do. Reynolds set his pen down, looked at the photos, then at me. Interesting, he said. That was all. 3 hours later, Marcus posted bail. $150,000. Cash bond. He didn't ask where the money came from. He didn't ask if I was guilty. He just handed the clerk a cashier's check and walked me out of the building. Outside, the June sun was too bright. I squinted, felt the heat on my face, smelled the exhaust from the parking lot. Freedom. Temporary, conditional, but still freedom. Marcus led me to his black sedan. Get in. I did. He started the engine, pulled out of the lot, and drove for 5 minutes in silence. Then he said, "They're going to fit you with an ankle monitor." I nodded. I know. You'll have a curfew. 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. You can't leave the county. You can't contact any witnesses. You can't... Marcus, I didn't do this. He glanced at me. I know. How do you know? Because I've known you for 15 years. Because you called me at 6 in the morning, the day you retired, to make sure your estate paperwork was up to date. Because you're the kind of guy who labels his garage tools with a label maker. He turned onto the highway. You're not a criminal, Warren. You're an engineer. And engineers don't commit crimes. They solve problems. Then help me solve this one. I'm trying. He reached into his briefcase, pulled out a folder. But there's something you need to know. What? Amber filed an emergency petition with the court yesterday. She's claiming your assets are at risk due to criminal activity. She's asking for a temporary restraining order on all your accounts. I stared at him. She what? Your bank accounts, your savings, your investment portfolio, everything's frozen. You can't access any of it until the court reviews the petition. Can she do that? She can try, and she did. He handed me the paperwork. The hearing is scheduled for Friday. We'll fight it. But until then, you're effectively broke. I looked at the papers, at Amber's signature at the bottom, at the line that read, "Petitioner requests immediate relief to protect marital assets from dissipation or concealment." Marital assets. She wasn't just framing me for burglary. She was taking everything. Marcus pulled into my driveway 20 minutes later. The house looked the same cedar shingles, same stone chimney, same porch where I'd found the box 2 days ago. But it felt different, smaller, like someone had moved the walls while I wasn't looking. Ellie was waiting on the porch. She ran down the steps, wrapped her arms around me, and didn't let go. I'm okay, I said. She pulled back, looked at my face. No, you're not. I will be. Marcus stood by the car. Warren, the ankle monitor technician, will be here in an hour. Don't leave the property until it's installed. I nodded. He got back in the car and drove away. Ellie took my hand. What did Marcus say? Amber froze our accounts. Her face went pale. All of them. All of them. She didn't cry, didn't shout, just squeezed my hand tighter. Then we'll fight this. How? The same way we fought everything else. She looked at the house we'd built together, board by board, nail by nail. We'll survive. I wanted to believe her. I opened the front door. and stopped. Amber was sitting on the couch. Not standing, not pacing, sitting, like she owned the place. 2 McDonald's bags sat on the coffee table. Big Macs, fries, the smell of cheap grease filled the room. She looked up and smiled. "Hi, Dad," she said. "I brought you dinner." By Friday, I'd learned to recognize the sound of her car. The silver SUV, engine too loud for a residential street, tires crunching gravel like she was trying to announce herself. I was in the kitchen when I heard it pull into the driveway 10 a.m. Sharp, and I knew without looking that Amber was back. Ellie was upstairs. I told her to stay there, told her I'd handle whatever came next. I didn't know if I believed it. The doorbell rang. I opened the door. Amber stood on the porch dressed like she was heading to brunch. White blouse, designer jeans, sunglasses pushed up into her hair. Behind her, a man in a cheap suit climbed out of the passenger seat. 50-ish, thinning hair, briefcase that looked like it had been through a car wash. "Morning, Dad," Amber said. She didn't smile. "This is Howard Klein. He's a lawyer." I looked at Klein. He looked at me. "Mr. Hayes," he said, extending a hand. "I'm here to help." I didn't shake it. They came inside without asking. Amber walked straight to the dining table, set down her purse, and pulled out a folder. Clean followed, briefcase in hand, moving like a man who'd done this before. Too many times. Tyler was the last one through the door. My son, 37 years old, wrinkled polo, hands in his pockets. He wouldn't look at me. "What's this about?" I asked. Amber opened the folder. "We need you to sign something." "What?" "A power of attorney." She slid a stack of papers across the table. "It's a formality, just to make sure the family's finances are protected while you're dealing with everything." I didn't touch the papers. "Protected from what?" "From the court," she said. "From the lawyers. From whoever's trying to take advantage of you." She leaned forward, her voice soft, concerned. "Dad, you're 68. You were just arrested. People are going to come after you. This way I can manage things. Keep everything safe." I looked at Tyler. "You agree with this?" He shifted his weight. Didn't answer. "Tyler," I said. "It's just a formality, Dad." "Is it?" Amber's smile tightened. "Warren, this is for your own good. My own good." "Yes." I picked up the papers, flipped through them. Legalese, clauses, signatures. At the bottom, a line for my name, and above it, a sentence that made my chest tighten. "The principal grants the agent full authority to manage, control, and dispose of all financial assets, including real property, bank accounts, and investment portfolios." Dispose. I set the papers down. "No." Amber's smile vanished. "Excuse me." I said no. "Warren, I'm not signing this." Klein cleared his throat. "Mr. Hayes, I understand your hesitation. But given the circumstances, your arrest, the pending charges, it's in your best interest to ensure someone you trust can act on your behalf." "I trust Marcus Dalton," I said. "My lawyer, the one I've had for 15 years. "Marcus isn't family," Amber said. "Neither are you." Her eyes went cold. "Dad," Tyler said quietly, "just sign it." I looked at him, at my son, the boy I'd taught to throw a baseball, the kid who'd helped me rebuild the fence when he was 12. The man who wouldn't meet my eyes. "Now, once," I said. Amber stood up. "Fine, then we'll do this the hard way." "What's that supposed to mean?" She walked around the table, stopped a foot away from me, close enough that I could smell her perfume, that same cloying scent from the bedroom obsidian night, cheap and suffocating. "If you don't sign," she said softly, "I'll file a petition to have you declared mentally incompetent. You're 68. You were just arrested for burglary. You're showing signs of confusion paranoia. The court will believe me." She tilted her head. "And then you'll be in a facility. A nice one, with nurses and doctors and locked doors. Is that what you want?" I stared at her. "Because I can make it happen," she said. "One phone call, one doctor's evaluation. That's all it takes." My hands shook, not from fear, from rage. But I couldn't let her see it. I looked at Klein. "You're okay with this?" He adjusted his glasses. "Mr. Hayes, I'm here to facilitate a legal transaction. If you choose not to sign, that's your right. But I would advise you to consider the consequences." "Consequences?" "Yes." I looked at the papers, at the line where my signature was supposed to go. And I thought about the last time I'd been cornered, 45 years ago. Ellie's father standing in his office telling me I wasn't good enough, telling me to walk away, telling me that if I didn't, he'd make sure I never worked in this town again. I hadn't walked away then. I wasn't walking away now, but I wasn't going to lose either. I picked up the pen. Amber smiled, and I signed. but I didn't sign with my right hand. I switched the pen to my left. Amber didn't notice. Klein didn't notice. Tyler was staring at the floor. I wrote slowly, deliberately, the letters shaky, uneven, wrong. And when I got to my last name, I changed it. One letter, that's all it took. Warren Haynes, not Hayes. Haynes, Ito-N. If anyone ever checked if Marcus ever looked at this, if a court ever questioned it, they'd see it. The wrong name, the wrong hand. Proof that I'd been coerced. I set the pen down. There, I said. Amber picked up the paper, glanced at it, and handed it to Klein. He pulled out a notary stamp, generic, no embossed seal, the kind you could buy online, and pressed it onto the bottom of the page. All set, he said. No questions, no verification, no witnesses. A real lawyer would have caught it. But Klein wasn't a real lawyer. They left 10 minutes later. Amber grabbed her purse. Tyler followed her out without a word. Klein shook my hand again, clammy too firm, and walked to the SUV. I stood in the doorway and watched them drive away. And then I saw it. A small black clutch, lying on the floor beneath the chair where Amber had been sitting. She'd dropped it. I picked it up, unzipped it. Inside, a photo, glossy, crumpled. A little boy, maybe 7, standing in front of a swing set. Blonde hair, blue eyes, smiling. And beneath it a receipt. Fairfield Inn, Tacoma, Washington. Check-in, June 2nd, 2024. Guest A. Sutton. 2 days before, the box showed up on my porch. I stared at the photo, at the boy. Who was he? I put the clutch in the kitchen drawer, locked it. Later, I'd call Marcus, show him the receipt, figure out what it meant. But not tonight. Tonight I heard voices downstairs. Amber's, sharp, low. Tyler's, quieter, almost pleading. I couldn't make out the words. But I heard a door slam, and then silence. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. I lay in bed next to Ellie, staring at the ceiling, replaying the argument I'd heard through the floor. Amber's voice sharp and cold. Tyler's quieter, almost pleading. The door slamming. The silence that followed. Guys, what were they fighting about? By the time the sun came up, I still didn't have an answer. Tyler showed up alone at 9 the next morning. No Amber, no Klein, just him standing on the porch, hands in his pockets, looking like he hadn't slept either. I opened the door. "Dad," he said, "can we talk?" I didn't answer, just stepped aside and let him in. He walked to the living room, sat on the couch where Amber had sat 2 days ago. Same spot, same nervous energy. But this time, he looked me in the eye. "I need to ask you something," he said. I stayed standing. "Go ahead." He took a breath. "Will you plead guilty?" I stared at him. "To the burglary charges," he said. "If you plead guilty, the DA will probably offer a deal. A few years, maybe less. You're 68, first offense. They might go easy on you. And why," I said slowly, "would I plead guilty to something I didn't do? Because it's the only way to protect the family." "Protect the family." "Yeah." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Dad, if you fight this, they're going to dig into everything. Bank accounts, property records, the trust. They'll freeze it all. We'll lose the house. The savings, everything. We won't lose it if I'm found innocent. If," he looked at me, "Dad, you were arrested. There was evidence. A lot of it. Even if you didn't do it, even if someone set you up, how do you prove that? How do you convince a jury?" I didn't answer. "But if you plead guilty," he said, "it's over. Quick, clean. We keep the house, we keep the money. Amber and I can take care of things while you're away. And when you get out, everything will still be here." When bestistor. I sat down across from him. "Tyler, listen to yourself." "I am." "You're asking me to go to prison for a crime I didn't commit. I'm asking you to think about the family." "The family," I said. "Which family? The one where your wife frames me for burglary, or the one where my son asked me to take the fall?" He flinched, but he didn't back down. "Dad," he said quietly, "you're 68. I know how old I am. You're going to, he stopped, looked at the floor, then back at me. "You're going to pass eventually. Soon. Maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but you don't have much time left. I'm 37. Amber's 36. We have our whole lives ahead of us." I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. He kept going. "If you take the deal, you do a few years. You come out. You still get to see the house the grandkids we're planning to have. But if you fight this and lose, you'll die in prison. And we'll lose everything anyway." I stared at him, at my son, the boy I'd raised, the man I'd trusted. And he was asking me to throw my life away so he could keep a house. I thought about a Saturday morning 30 years ago. Tyler was 7. We were in the garage. I was teaching him how to assemble a small engine, a lawnmower motor I'd salvaged from a neighbor's trash. His hands were small, clumsy. He kept dropping the screws. But he didn't give up. And when we finally got it running, when that engine sputtered to life and filled the garage with the smell of gasoline and oil, he looked at me like I'd built the whole world. That's when I told him, "Son," I said, kneeling down so we were eye to eye, "if anyone ever tells you to do something wrong for the sake of family that's not family, that's a gang." He'd nodded. "I understand, Dad." "Do you—" "Yeah, family means doing what's right, not what's easy." I'd ruffled his hair. "That's my boy." I thought he'd meant it. Knowing, I said. Tyler looked up. "What, yeah?" I said no. I'm not pleading guilty. I didn't do this, and I'm not going to say I did. "Does Dad, I taught you better than this." I stood up. "You know what you're asking me to do. You're asking me to lie, to give up my freedom, my life, so you can keep a house you didn't build and money you didn't earn." "It's not about the money. It's exactly about the money." I stepped closer. "And I don't know if this was your idea or hers, but I know one thing: the son I raised wouldn't ask me to do this." His face went red. "You don't know what it's like. You don't know what Amber—" He stopped. I waited. "What Amber—" What I said. He shook his head, stood up. "You're going to regret this." "Am I?" "Yeah." He walked to the door, stopped, looked back at me one more time. "You are." And then he left. I stood in the empty living room for a long time. Then I reached for my watch. Not the ankle monitor that was locked around my left leg, a constant weight, a reminder that I was still a suspect. This was different, a smartwatch. GPS enabled. I'd bought it 2 years ago, synced it to Marcus's phone when we'd set up the emergency contact system for the estate plan. There was a feature I'd never used before. Press and hold the side button for 3 seconds. It sends a distress signal. Location, timestamp, SOS. I pressed it, held it, felt the faint buzz of confirmation. Whether Marcus would see it, whether he'd understand, I didn't know. But it was all I had. That night, Amber brought me soup, tomato. She carried it on a tray, set it on the kitchen table, and smiled. "Made it myself," she said. "Thought you could use a hot meal." I looked at the bowl, steam rising, red and thick. Thanks," I said. "Go ahead, eat." I picked up the spoon, stirred, and smelled it, faint, chemical, sweet in a way that didn't belong in food. I'd worked around industrial solvents for 40 years. Concrete additives, rust inhibitors, cleaning agents. I knew that smell. Sedative, dissolved in liquid. Probably something strong, maybe benzodiazepine, maybe something worse. She wanted me unconscious. I set the spoon down, looked at Amber. She was still smiling. "Eat up, Dad," she said. I didn't. I had 2 choices. Refuse and she'd know I knew, or pretend. I chose the second. "You're right," I said. "I should eat." Amber's smile didn't change, but her eyes did. Just a flicker, like she'd been expecting a fight and didn't get one. I picked up the spoon, dipped it into the soup, brought it to my lips. She watched. I pretended to swallow, let the liquid sit in my mouth for a second, warm, bitter chemical, then tilted my head back like I was drinking water. But I wasn't swallowing. I was holding it. And when Amber looked down at her phone, I turned slightly, leaned toward the potted fern on the side table, and let the soup dribble out. Silent. Slow. I did it again and again, a spoonful at a time, not all at once, just enough to make it look like I was eating. By the time the bowl was half empty, my hands were starting to shake, not from the drug, I hadn't ingested enough for that, but from the act, from pretending. Amber looked up. "How do you feel?" "Tired," I said, and I let my voice slur, just a little. "Good," she set her phone down. "That's good, Dad. You need rest." I nodded, let my eyelids droop. She stood up. "I'll be right back. Just going to get you a blanket." She left the room, and I knew I had maybe 2 minutes. I stood up, slow, unsteady, let my knees buckle like the drug was kicking in. My hand reached for the table, missed. I stumbled, caught myself on the chair. Then I let go and went down. I hit the floor hard, not hard enough to hurt, just hard enough to sell it. My shoulder took the impact, my head lolled to the side. I closed my eyes, went limp. Footsteps. Warren, Ellie's voice, upstairs, panicked. I didn't move. Warren, she was running down the stairs. I heard her cross the living room, felt her hands on my face. Yet Warren, wake up. Warren, He's fine. Amber's voice. Calm, cold. Ellie looked up. What did you do? He collapsed. I think it's the stress, the arrest, everything. Amber pulled out her phone. I'm calling for help. Yet I'll call 911. No. Amber held up a hand. I already called a private service. They're on their way. A private service? A medical transport. They specialize in elderly patients. They'll take him somewhere safe, somewhere he can rest. Ellie stared at her. What are you talking about? He's not well, Ellie. You saw him. He's paranoid, confused. He thinks I'm trying to hurt him. That's not normal. Because you are... I'm trying to help. Amber crouched down beside me, put her hand on my wrist, checking my pulse. We need to get him evaluated, professionally, before he does something dangerous. Dangerous. To himself. To you. Amber looked at Ellie. I'm doing this for his own good. Ellie didn't answer, and I knew lying there, eyes closed, heart pounding, that she believed it. 5 minutes later, I heard tires on gravel. A vehicle pulled up outside, engine idling, doors opening. Footsteps on the porch. The front door swung open. 2 men walked in. I couldn't see them. My eyes were closed, but I heard them. Heavy boots, fabric rustling, no voices. He's here, Amber said. On the floor. The men didn't respond. I felt hands under my arms, lifting, strong, efficient, no gentleness. They carried me out of the house. Ellie was shouting something. I couldn't make it out. Her voice was too far away, too muffled by the roar in my ears. I cracked my eyes open, just a sliver. 2 men, both in their 30s, maybe 40s, wearing gray jumpsuits, no logos, no badges, no names. They weren't paramedics. They weren't medical personnel. They were hired muscle. They loaded me into the back of a van, not an ambulance, a cargo van. White, no windows, no markings, no license plate that I could see. The floor was cold metal, ridged like a delivery truck. One of the men climbed in beside me. The other got in the driver's seat. The doors slammed shut, and we started moving. I lay still for the first 10 minutes, listening, waiting. The men didn't talk, didn't check on me, didn't ask if I was okay. That's when I knew for sure. This wasn't a medical transport. This was an abduction. I cracked my eyes open again. The man beside me was staring at his phone earbuds and not paying attention. I reached for my watch, the smartwatch on my left wrist, still there, still working. I pressed the side button. 3 seconds, the faint buzz. SOS sent. Location updated. I didn't know if Marcus was watching. Didn't know if he'd seen the first signal or this one, or if he'd even understand what it meant. But it was all I had. The van drove for 90 minutes. I know, because I counted. 60 seconds per minute, 90 minutes, 5,400 seconds. I'd spent 40 years timing concrete pours, calculating load delays, measuring bridge stress under traffic. I could count time in my sleep. And I knew from the turns, from the angle of the road, from the way the sun set through the crack in the door, that we were heading south, away from Bellevue, away from Seattle, away from anyone who might help me. When the van finally stopped, I heard gravel under the tires. The engine cut. The doors opened. Hands grabbed me again, lifted, carried. I kept my eyes mostly closed, but I saw enough. A building, old, 2 stories, brick, windows with bars. A sign out front faded and cracked, Sunnyvale Wellness Center. Wellness. Right. They carried me inside. The air smelled like bleach and mildew. The hallway was narrow, fluorescent lights flickering overhead. Linoleum floors cracked and peeling. They took me to a room, small, 10 by 10 maybe. A metal bed bolted to the floor. A thin mattress, no pillow, no blanket. A toilet in the corner with no seat. They dropped me on the bed and left. The door slammed shut. I heard the lock click. I opened my eyes. The room was dim, 1 window high up with bars. The glass was dirty. I couldn't see out. I sat up, slowly, listening. Footsteps in the hallway, voices, low, distant. Then the door opened. A man walked in. White coat, clipboard, 50 maybe. Thinning hair, dead eyes. A face that looked like it had stopped caring a long time ago. "Mr. Hayes," he said. His voice was flat. No warmth, no concern. "I'm Dr. Hammond." I didn't believe him. "You're going to stay here," he said, "until you calm down." "I'm calm?" "No, you're not." He glanced at his clipboard, didn't write anything. "You've been exhibiting signs of paranoia, aggression, and delusional thinking. Your family is concerned. They've asked us to evaluate you." "My family," I said slowly, "is trying to put me in here so they can steal my house. Hammond's expression didn't change. That's exactly the kind of statement I'm talking about. He turned to leave. Wait, I said. I want to call my lawyer. You can make a call once you've been cleared by our staff psychiatrist. When will that be? A few days, maybe a week. A week? He looked at me. Mr. Hayes, the sooner you cooperate, the sooner you go home. And then he left. The door locked behind him. I sat on the bed, stared at the walls, thought about Ellie, about Marcus, about the GPS signal I'd sent. And I thought about the fact that no one, not the van driver, not the men in gray, not Dr. Hammond, had asked for my consent. No paperwork, no court order, no family signature. This wasn't a hospital. This was a prison. I lay back on the mattress, stared at the ceiling. And that's when I saw it, an air vent, metal grate, about 3 feet long, 1 foot wide, screwed into the drywall above the bed. 4 screws, rusty, old, the kind that would come loose with a little pressure. I'd spent 40 years analyzing structural weaknesses, load-bearing failures, stress fractures, points of collapse. And I just found one. 3 days. That's how long it took to convince them I'd given up. I ate the meals they brought, gray slop that tasted like cardboard, but I choked it down. Answered Dr. Hammond's questions with one-word replies. Yes. No. Fine. Sat on the bed. Stared at the wall. Played the part of a broken old man. And they believed it. By Tuesday night, the guards stopped checking on me every hour. By Wednesday, the night shift started getting sloppy, skipping rounds, scrolling through their phones instead of watching the monitors. By Wednesday night, I had what I needed. The spoon came with dinner on Tuesday. Metal, thin, the kind they give you in cafeterias because it's cheap and bends easy. I slipped it under the mattress when the guard came to collect the tray. He didn't notice, or didn't care. That night, I worked the handle, bent it at a 45-degree angle, tested the edge against the bed frame, sharp enough, good enough. I waited until midnight. The hallway lights dimmed to a dull orange. The voices stopped. Somewhere down the corridor, a door slammed. Then silence. I climbed onto the bed, reached up, pressed the bent spoon into the first screw. It turned. Not easy. The rust fought me. The metal squeaked, but it turned. 5 minutes for the first screw, 10 for the second. The third came loose faster. The fourth fell into my hand. I set the grate down on the bed, quiet, careful, and stared up into the darkness of the vent. The duct was tight, 2 feet wide, maybe less. Dark. I pulled myself up, elbows dragging on the metal knees, scraping against the edges. I'd done this before, 40 years ago, crawling through inspection tunnels under the I-90 bridge, checking for rust, for cracks, for failure points. You learn to breathe shallow in tight spaces, to move slow, to ignore the weight of the walls pressing in. This was the same, except I was 68 now. My back screamed. My shoulders didn't fit the way they used to. My knees ground against bone with every inch forward. But I kept moving. 50 meters, that's what I estimated. 50 meters between captivity and freedom. The duct turned left, then right, then sloped down. I followed the faint current of air, the whisper of outside, the promise of open sky. And then I saw it. Light, faint, gray, the end of the duct. I kicked the exterior vent. Once, twice, 3 times. It gave. I fell, landed in a bush. Thorns scratched my arms, my face, my ankle twisted. Pain shot up my leg. I didn't care. I stood, looked around. A parking lot, empty. 2 cars, no guards, no lights. Just the hum of a distant highway and the smell of diesel and wet pavement. I ran. 3 miles. That's how far I walked along the shoulder of Highway 1. 01, sticking to the shadows, keeping off the road when headlights appeared. My back screamed. My knees throbbed. Every step felt like someone was driving nails into my spine. But I kept moving. By the time I reached the gas station, a shell fluorescent lights buzzing 1 car at the pump, I could barely stand. I found the payphone. Ancient, scratched glass, graffiti on the metal box, but it worked. I fumbled in the coin return, found 2 quarters, dialed Marcus. He answered on the second ring. Warren, it's me. Where are you? I read the sign on the pump. Highway 101, Shell Station, mile marker 32. Stay there, I'm coming. The line went dead. Marcus arrived in 20 minutes. Black sedan, no questions. He opened the passenger door and I climbed in. My hands were shaking. My shirt was torn. Blood on my knuckles from the vent screws. He looked at me. Are you hurt? I'm fine. You're not? I'm fine. He didn't argue. Just put the car in gear and drove. We pulled up to the Four Seasons 40 minutes later. Downtown Seattle, glass tower, valet parking. Marcus handed the keys to a young guy in a vest and led me inside. The lobby was marble and gold, too bright, too clean. I felt like I didn't belong, but Marcus didn't stop. He walked straight to the elevators, pressed the button for the 40th floor. We rode up in silence. The doors opened, and there was Ellie. She ran to me, threw her arms around me, and cried. I held her, didn't let go, felt her shake against my chest, felt her fingers dig into my back like she was afraid I'd disappear again. I thought I'd lost you, she whispered. I'm here, I said. I'm here. She pulled back, looked at my face, at the scratches, the bruises, the blood. What did they do to you? They tried to keep me, but you got out. I got out. She kissed me, soft, then harder, then buried her face in my shoulder and didn't let go. Marcus stood by the window, arms crossed, watching the city lights 40 stories below. I tracked the GPS signal, he said. I knew where you were, but I couldn't go to the police. I looked up. Why not? Because Amber has that power of attorney. If you'd reported an abduction, she'd claim you were delusional, paranoid, suffering from stress-induced psychosis. The courts would side with her. The courts would commit you. He turned to face me. Legally this time, to a real psychiatric facility, with a judge's signature, and then you'd be gone, for good. I stared at him. We need evidence, he said, solid, undeniable, before we move. Evidence of what? Everything. He walked to the desk, opened his laptop. I've been digging, and I found something. What? He turned the screen toward me. A photo. Surveillance camera. Grainy. Date stamp in the corner, June 3rd, 2024. A parking lot. Two people standing close. One of them was Amber. The other was a man. 32 maybe, tall, brown hair, dressed in jeans and a t-shirt. Nothing special, nothing that stood out, except he was kissing my daughter-in-law. I stared at the screen, at the man, at Amber's hands on his chest, at the way she leaned into him, at the way he held her like he'd done it 1,000 times before. Who is he? I asked. Marcus's face was grim. That, he said, is what we need to find out. Sunday morning, 4 days after I'd escaped from Sunnyvale, I sat in the Four Seasons suite while Marcus spread a thick manila folder across the coffee table. Ellie sat beside me, her hand wrapped around a mug of coffee she hadn't touched. The folder was labeled Amber Sutton, Background Investigation. Marcus tapped the cover. I've spent the past 72 hours digging into Amber's past, and I found him. He pulled out a photograph, a man in his early 30s, lean and tattooed, standing behind a bar. Ryan Fletcher, 32 years old, bartender and part-time musician in Tacoma. He and Amber have been together for 8 years. I stared at the photo. 8 years. Amber had married Tyler 9 years ago. They have a son. Marcus continued sliding over a second photograph, a boy maybe 7 years old, with Amber's eyes and Ryan's dark hair. Liam Fletcher, 7 years old, lives with Ryan in Tacoma. Ellie's hand tightened around mine. She was with Ryan the whole time. Marcus nodded. The whole time. She married Tyler for one reason, to gain access to the Hayes family trust. He pulled out a legal document, 20 pages bound, stamped with the seal of King County Superior Court. This is the Hayes Family Revocable Living Trust, established 6 years ago. You and Ellie are the primary beneficiaries. The trust holds the Bellevue house valued at $2.4 million plus $80,000 in an offshore account, and another $150,000 in diversified investments. Total assets approximately $2.6 million. I nodded slowly. I'd set up the trust with Marcus's help to avoid probate, to protect Ellie if something happened to me, to make sure Tyler didn't have to deal with estate taxes and legal battles. Marcus leaned forward, his voice dropping. But here's the key, Warren. You're not just the beneficiary of this trust. You're the grantor. You created it. You control it. As long as you're alive and mentally competent, no one, not Amber, not Tyler, not anyone, can touch a single dollar without your explicit written consent. I frowned. Then why all of this? Why frame me? Why kidnap me to that place in Sunnyvale? Marcus set his pen down and looked me in the eye. Because if you're declared mentally incompetent, say by a court order after you're committed to a psychiatric facility, or if you're incapacitated by imprisonment, Amber could petition for guardianship or conservatorship over you. With a fake power of attorney in hand and Tyler as your concerned son, she could argue to a probate judge that she's acting in your best interest. She'd gained control of the trust assets, the house, the offshore accounts, everything. Sheriff Brenner, who'd been standing by the window, turned around. That's why she tried to get you into Sunnyvale, Warren. It wasn't just kidnapping. It was step one in having you declared incompetent. Once you're locked in a fake mental health facility with no contact with the outside world, she could produce fabricated medical records testimony from that so-called doctor. Hammond and file a petition in King County Probate Court. By the time anyone realized what was happening, the house would be sold, the money transferred, and she'd be in Mexico with Ryan and Liam. I felt the room tilt. She wasn't just trying to steal from me, she was trying to erase me. Marcus nodded. Exactly. And if that didn't work, if you fought back, if someone intervened, she had a backup plan, get you convicted of a crime. A felon serving time in state prison can't manage a revocable trust. The court would appoint a conservator to handle your affairs. And guess who'd volunteer Tyler, the devoted son? That's were with Amber pulling the strings behind him. I sat back, the weight of it crushing my chest. Every step had been calculated. The planted evidence on Father's Day. The fake power of attorney signed Haynes. The kidnapping to Sunnyvale. The attempt to sell the house. It wasn't opportunistic. It was a surgical strike designed to take everything, my freedom, my legal competence, my life, and hand it to her on a court-approved platter. She built a machine to destroy me, I said quietly. Yes, Marcus replied, but we're going to dismantle it, one piece at a time. He pulled out a second folder, this one labeled Amber Sutton, Prior Victims. Her real name is Amy Sutherland. She grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Abusive alcoholic father. She left home at 18 and spent the next decade running cons. Between 2012 and 2020, she defrauded 4 elderly men, ages 65 to 78, out of a combined $300,000. She'd marry them, forge documents, drain their accounts, and disappear. One of them died 6 months after she left. Heart attack. His family couldn't prove she'd done anything criminal, but they knew. Ellie covered her mouth. And no one stopped her. She's good, Brenner said. She changes her name, moves to a new state, finds a new target. By the time anyone realizes what happened, she's gone. In 2018, a psychiatrist in Oklahoma diagnosed her with antisocial personality disorder. She's not capable of empathy, Warren. She sees people as tools. I closed my eyes. Tyler, my son. He'd been a tool. Marcus closed the folder. Now, here's what we're going to do. Amber thinks she's won. She thinks you're hiding, scared, waiting for the trial. We're going to make her panic. We're going to make her think you're everywhere. What do you mean? He smiled. The decoy army. 2 days later, on a Tuesday morning, I stood on the sidewalk outside Pike Place Market and watched 15 men walk past me. They were all middle-aged, all wearing identical gray jackets, black knit caps, and sunglasses. They all looked like me, or close enough that from a distance you couldn't tell the difference. Marcus had hired them through Simon Cross, a 45-year-old ex-con who ran a halfway house in Belltown. Simon owed Marcus a favor from years ago, and when Marcus explained the plan, Simon didn't hesitate. He recruited 15 men, former addicts, ex-felons, guys who'd been written off by society, but still had fight left in them, and offered them $50 each to spend the morning walking around Seattle dressed like Warren Hayes. At 10 a.m., the decoy army deployed. 3 men walked through Pike Place Market. 2 boarded the Bainbridge Island ferry. 4 sat in separate Starbucks locations across downtown. 2 wandered the University of Washington campus. 1 stood outside the King County Courthouse. 3 strolled through Bellevue Square Mall. By noon, social media was on fire. Hashtag Warren Hayes trended on Twitter. Someone posted a photo. I just saw Warren Hayes at Pike Place. Another, wait, I just saw him on the ferry. A third, he's at the library on Capitol Hill. A reporter from King 5 News did a segment, Mysterious Sightings of Accused Burglar, Warren Hayes Reported Across Seattle Conspiracy, or Coordinated Protest, Balsestam and Marianne. Marcus played the recording for me that evening. Amber's voice shrill and panicked on a call to Ryan. They're watching us. I don't know how, but they're everywhere. We need to move faster. Sell the house now. Get the money out. We leave next week. Ryan's voice uncertain. Are you sure? What if... No more waiting, Amber snapped. Do it! Marcus stopped the recording and looked at me. She's rattled. She's going to make a mistake. And when she does, we'll be ready. I nodded. For the first time in 2 weeks, I felt something close to hope. Marcus leaned back in his chair. Now comes the hard part. We need her to confess. I have a plan, Warren. but you won't like it. I met his eyes. Tell me. We're going to set a trap, he said. A fake auction, a fake buyer, and a hidden camera. We're going to make her think she's won, and then we're going to let her tell us everything. I took a deep breath. Do it. If you're still here, comment, still watching. So I know you're with me. And if you were in this situation, standing just one step away from the truth, would you keep going and face it, or walk away to protect yourself? I really want to hear your choice. And a quick note, the next part of this story includes some dramatized elements to enhance the experience and message. If this isn't for you, feel free to stop watching here. Thursday morning, I sat in the Four Seasons suite while Marcus spread a city map across the coffee table. He tapped a red circle over Pioneer Square. This is where we'll hold the auction, he said. Small hotel conference room. We'll invite Howard Klein, tell him there's a 5% commission on a high-value estate sale. I leaned back, my ankle monitor cold above my sock. And Amber, she'll come. She thinks she has control now. He slid a photograph across the table, a stack of $100 bills, each stamped in tiny gray letters with the word prop. Movie money. Legal to own, illegal to spend. Most people never notice the mark. I picked up one of the bills. It felt real, the texture, the weight, the faint smell of ink. She won't check, I said. Exactly. Marcus pulled out a second diagram, my house floor plan, with a red X in the kitchen. Tonight you go back and install a hidden camera, right here in the ceramic vase. Wireless, no LED, smaller than a dime. It'll stream live to your phone. I stared at the X. I'm wearing a monitor, Marcus. I know. That's why I've arranged for a technician, someone from my old criminal defense days. He can jam the GPS signal for 2 hours. It's illegal. If we're caught, I lose my license and you go back to jail. But without that camera, we have no proof. I thought of Ellie in the next room, of Tyler, standing silent while his wife threatened to lock me away, of the $75,000 Amber had planted under my mattress. Every piece of evidence had been a lie. Do it, I said. The auction was at 2 p.m. Marcus had rented a conference room at the Watermark Hotel, 2 blocks from Pike Place Market. 8 people sat in folding chairs, all hired by Marcus, all briefed to stay quiet. I sat in the back row, wearing a mariner's cap and reading glasses. No one looked twice. Howard Klein arrived first, carrying his scuffed briefcase. He wore a cheap gray suit and a mismatched tie. Amber and Tyler came 10 minutes later. Amber wore a navy blazer and heels. Tyler walked 2 steps behind, hands in his pockets, eyes down. Amber set a black portfolio on the table and unzipped it. Inside was a painting, an oil landscape in a gold frame, maybe 2 feet by 3, depicting some vague European countryside. I'd never seen it before in my life. Ladies and gentlemen, Amber said, her voice smooth. This is a 19th century original from the Hayes family collection, appraised at $65,000. I'm here as legal representative of Warren Hayes under full power of attorney. She held up the document. Even from the back, I could see the signature, Warren Haynes. Howard Klein notarized it on the spot. Marcus raised a wooden gavel. Do I hear an opening bid? A man in the 3rd row, Frank, a retired accountant Marcus had hired, raised his hand. $65,000. Sold. Marcus brought the gavel down. Frank handed Amber a manila envelope. She opened it, thumbed through the hundreds, and smiled. She didn't count them. She didn't hold them to the light. She didn't see the tiny prop stamps. She tucked the envelope into her portfolio, shook Klein's hand, and walked out. Tyler followed without looking back. At 7:30, I was pacing the Four Seasons suite. My phone buzzed. Technician in position. Signal jam, starts 8 p.m., 2 hours, do not get pulled over. Ellie squeezed my hand. Be careful. I took the service elevator to the parking garage and got into the gray Honda Accord Marcus had left. I drove south on E5, merged onto I-90 eastbound, and took the Bellevue exit. My street was quiet, houses glowing with warm light. My house was dark. I let myself in through the side door. The air smelled stale. I moved quickly to the kitchen. The ceramic vase sat on the counter filled with dried lavender. I pulled the camera from my pocket, a black cylinder, the size of a pencil eraser, magnetic base pinhole lens. I pressed it into the vase's curve, angled toward the table, and tapped my phone. The screen lit up live feed, clear and silent. I was back in the car by 8:40. The GPS flickered online at 9:15. The monitoring portal later showed a technical error, nothing flagged. At 10:30, I sat on the couch with Ellie, phone in hand. The kitchen feed showed an empty room. Then the light flicked on. Amber walked into frame in sweatpants and a t-shirt, hair in a ponytail. She carried a small plastic container and set it on the table. Inside, dark shredded meat glistening with sauce. She spooned it into a ceramic bowl, then pulled out a photograph, my photograph from the Father's Day card, and propped it against the bowl. "Hey, old man," she said, voice low and steady. "This is your last meal. Next week you'll be gone locked up in a psychiatric facility or maybe just dead from a heart attack. Doesn't matter. This house, this money, it's all mine. I hid the $75,000 under your bed. I faked the paperwork. I called the cops. I got Tyler to stay quiet because he's too weak. Ryan and I are leaving. We're taking Liam and we're going somewhere you'll never find us." She leaned closer, face filling the screen. "And Tyler, he's just a fool. He never figured it out." She picked up the bowl and photograph carried them to the sink, dumped the meat down the garbage disposal, and ran the water. Then she walked out. The kitchen went dark. I sat staring at the blank screen, hands shaking. Ellie's fingers tightened around mine. "She just confessed to everything," she whispered. I nodded, unable to speak. I saved the video, copied it to a second device, and sent it to Marcus via encrypted email. The next morning, Marcus called at 7. "Amber just scheduled an appointment with a title company for 2 p.m. today. She's trying to sell the house $2.4 million. She'll use that fake power of attorney and try to close before you can stop her." I sat up. "What do we do?" Marcus's voice was calm, almost cheerful. "We'll be there, and this time she won't be able to run." Friday afternoon, I sat in the passenger seat of Marcus's black Lexus, parked half a block down from the Pioneer Title and Escrow office on 3rd Avenue. Through the tinted windshield, I could see the building's glass doors, the gold lettering, the pedestrians drifting past with coffee cups and briefcases. My hands were clammy. The ankle monitor pressed into my shin like a shackle I'd never be rid of. Marcus checked his watch. 1:55. She'll be on time. She thinks this is the finish line. I nodded but didn't speak. I'd barely slept since watching that video of Amber standing in my kitchen confessing to everything. The image of her face, calm, cold, victorious, kept replaying in my mind. I wanted to believe this trap would work, but part of me feared she'd find a way out. She always had before. At 1:58, a silver Audi pulled up to the curb. Amber stepped out wearing a charcoal suit and heels, her hair pulled into a sleek bun. She looked like a corporate executive closing a merger. Howard Klein climbed out of the passenger side, clutching his battered briefcase. He wore the same cheap gray suit from the auction, the same mismatched tie. They walked to the entrance together, Amber's stride, confident, Klein's nervous. Marcus started the engine. "Let's go." Inside, the office smelled like fresh carpet and printer toner. A receptionist sat behind a curved desk, typing on a keyboard. Marcus nodded to her. She nodded back. We walked past her down a narrow hallway lined with framed photos of Seattle landmarks, the Space Needle Pike Place Market, the ferries crossing Elliott Bay, and into a conference room at the end. The room was small, maybe 12 feet by 15, with a polished oak table and 6 leather chairs. A woman in a navy blazer stood at the head of the table, sorting through a stack of documents. She looked up as we entered. "Mr. Dalton," she said, extending her hand to Marcus. "Everything's ready." "Thank you, Sarah." Marcus turned to me. "Warren, this is Sarah Mitchell, Senior Escrow Officer. She's been with Pioneer Title for 20 years. Sarah shook my hand. She was maybe 45, with short brown hair and sharp eyes that had probably seen every kind of real estate fraud imaginable. "Mr. Hayes," she said quietly, "I'm sorry for what you've been through. We're going to make this right." I nodded, my throat tight. Marcus gestured to the chairs. "We'll wait here." 5 minutes later, the door opened. Amber walked in. First her eyes scanning the room. When she saw me, she froze. Her expression flickered surprise, confusion, then anger. But she recovered quickly, smoothing her features into a mask of polite professionalism. "Warren," she said coolly, "I didn't realize you'd be here." "Ms. Sutton," Marcus said, rising from his seat. "Please sit down. Mr. Klein, you too." Howard Klein looked pale. He set his briefcase on the table and fumbled with the clasps, his hands shaking. Amber sat across from me, spine straight, chin up. She pulled a black leather portfolio from her bag and slid it across the table to Sarah. "I have all the necessary documents," she said. "Power of attorney, certificate of title, notarized affidavits. Everything's in order." Sarah opened the portfolio and began reviewing the papers, her face neutral. Amber glanced at me, then at Marcus. "This is a private transaction," she said. "I don't understand why—" The door opened again. Sheriff Thomas Brenner stepped into the room. He was 57, broad-shouldered with silver hair and a weathered face that had spent 30 years in law enforcement. He'd worked with me on a bridge project 15 years ago, back when King County was widening E405. We'd shared coffee in a construction trailer and talked about foundation stress and load distribution. He was a good man, steady fare, the kind of cop who still believed the law was supposed to protect people, not just punish them. "Afternoon, Warren," Brenner said, nodding to me. Then he looked at Amber. "Ms. Sutton, Mr. Klein." Amber's face went rigid. "I don't understand," she said. "What's going on?" Marcus stood and walked to the head of the table. "Ms. Sutton, we're here because you've attempted to sell a property worth $2.4 million using fraudulent documentation. Sarah, if you would..." Sarah Mitchell picked up the first document, the power of attorney. "This signature," she said, pointing to the bottom of the page, "reads Warren Haynes. That the legal owner of the property is Warren Hayes. It's not a typo. It's a different name. We had the document analyzed by a forensic handwriting expert, Mr. Hayes signed this with his left hand, deliberately altering his signature. Under Washington state law, this document has no legal validity." Amber's jaw tightened. "That's ridiculous. It's just a spelling error." "No," Marcus interrupted. "It's a forgery. You coerced Warren into signing a document while he was under duress after threatening him with psychiatric commitment. You then used that document to impersonate his legal authority." Sarah picked up the second document. "This is the certificate of title. It bears a notary seal from Howard Klein." She looked at Klein, who had gone completely white. "Mr. Klein, according to the Washington State Department of Licensing, your notary commission was revoked 5 years ago for fraudulent notarizations. You are not legally authorized to notarize any document." Klein opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Marcus continued. "Third, the Hayes family property is held in a revocable trust. I am the trustee. Under the terms of the trust, no sale of the primary residence can occur without my written consent. Ms. Sutton never sought my consent. She attempted to bypass the trust entirely by fabricating a power of attorney that doesn't exist in our legal records." Amber leaned forward, her voice low and sharp. "This is harassment. You're trying to intimidate me because Warren is angry." "No," Marcus said. "This is evidence." He pulled a manila folder from his briefcase and set it on the table. $65,000 in prop money marked with the word prop that you accepted at a fake auction yesterday. Video footage of you confessing to planting $75,000 in cash under Warren's mattress, forging documents, and conspiring with Ryan Fletcher to flee the state. And finally, he nodded to Sheriff Brenner. Brenner stepped closer to Amber. His voice was calm, almost gentle, but there was steel beneath it. "Amber Sutton, you're under arrest for fraud, forgery, conspiracy, and unlawful imprisonment. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Amber's face had gone pale. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "This is insane! I didn't..." Brenner held up a hand. "And we have one more piece of evidence." He pulled a clear plastic evidence bag from his jacket pocket. Inside was a strip of packing tape dusted with black fingerprint powder. "Your fingerprints, Ms. Sutton, on the tape inside the gift box that was delivered to Warren Hayes on Father's Day. The box containing stolen jewelry, burglary tools, and a handwritten note. You planted that evidence. We know it, and now we can prove it." For the first time since I'd met her, Amber had nothing to say. Her mouth opened, then closed. Her hands, which had been so steady, began to tremble. Brenner turned to Howard Klein. "Mr. Klein, you're also under arrest as an accessory to fraud." Klein slumped in his chair, head in his hands. 2 deputies appeared in the doorway. Brenner gestured to them, and they moved forward with handcuffs. Amber jerked her arm away when the first deputy reached for her, but he was calm, professional, and within seconds her wrists were cuffed behind her back. She looked at me, her eyes blazing with fury. "You'll regret this," she hissed. I met her gaze and said nothing. There was nothing left to say. Monday evening, I sat in the Four Seasons suite staring at the Seattle skyline through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city lights blurred into streaks of gold and white. Somewhere out there, Amber was in a holding cell at the King County Jail, and I should have felt relief, maybe even triumph. But all I felt was tired. Ellie had gone to bed an hour ago. I'd told her I'd join her soon, but I couldn't move. I just kept replaying that moment in the title company office when Amber's face went pale when she finally ran out of lies. The door clicked open. Marcus walked in carrying his briefcase and a thick manila folder. He looked exhausted. His tie was loose, his shirt wrinkled, his eyes red-rimmed. He dropped into the chair across from me and let out a long breath. "She confessed," he said. I didn't respond right away. I just nodded. I'd known it was coming, but hearing the words made it real. Marcus opened the folder and pulled out a photograph. It showed a strip of clear packing tape dusted with black fingerprint powder mounted on a white card. "And this is the tape from inside the Father's Day box," he said. "The forensic lab used cyanoacrylate fuming. Basically, they exposed the tape to superglue vapor. The fumes bond with the oils and sweat and fingerprints, even on the sticky side. It's a specialized technique, expensive, only used for major cases. Sheriff Brenner pushed for it. And why I asked, why would Brenner risk his career for this?" Marcus set the photo down. "Because 20 years ago, his father lost everything to a real estate con artist. Fake power of attorney, forged deeds, the whole setup. Brenner's father couldn't prove it in time. He lost his house, his savings. He died 6 months later, heart attack, but Brenner says it was really a broken heart. When Brenner saw your case, he recognized the pattern. He wasn't going to let it happen again." I swallowed hard. I'd known Brenner was a good cop, but I hadn't known that. Marcus tapped the photograph. "Amber's fingerprints are all over the sticky side of this tape. That means she handled it when she was sealing the box. She didn't just deliver it, she packed it. She planted everything inside." "Did she admit it?" "Not at first." Marcus pulled out a second sheet, a transcript. "Brenner brought her into the interrogation room this afternoon. She tried to play it cool, said the fingerprints must have gotten there accidentally, that maybe she touched the tape when she was helping Warren organize his workshop. But then Brenner played the video. The one from my kitchen?" Marcus nodded. "The one where she stands over the bowl and confesses everything. We had her voice on record saying she planted the money, forged the documents, called the cops. Once she saw that, she broke." He flipped through the transcript. "Here's what she said. I met Ryan Fletcher 8 years ago. We have a son, Liam, he's 7. I married Tyler to get access to Warren's money. I planned this for 2 years. I bought the stolen jewelry from a black market broker named Eddie Voss. He operates out of Tacoma deals and high-end goods taken from burglaries. I paid Simon Cross to give me a list of real homes that had been robbed in the area. I called in an anonymous tip 2 weeks before Father's Day, told the police to watch Warren. Then on Father's Day, I called 911 myself. I made it look like I was panicking, like I'd just discovered the box. But really, I wanted to control the narrative. I wanted them to think Warren was trying to hide it. I closed my eyes. Every word was a knife." Marcus continued. "Brenner dug into her background. Her real name is Amy Sutherland. She grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Her father was an alcoholic abusive. She left home at 18 and spent the next decade running cons. Between 2012 and 2020, she defrauded 4 men, elderly, wealthy, vulnerable, out of a combined $300,000. She'd marry them, forge documents, drain their accounts, and disappear. In 2018, a psychiatrist in Oklahoma diagnosed her with antisocial personality disorder. She's not capable of empathy, Warren. She sees people as tools." I opened my eyes, and Marcus's expression darkened. "She used him, that's all. She saw an opportunity young man with an old wealthy father, and she took it. According to the confession, she planned to divorce Tyler as soon as you were gone. She even wrote it in a journal we found at Ryan's apartment in Tacoma." He pulled out a photocopy of a handwritten page. The script was neat, almost elegant. "Tyler is too weak. After Warren is gone, hospital, prison, whatever, I'll file for divorce. Ryan and I will take Liam and move to Mexico. $2 million is enough to disappear forever. Tyler will never figure it out. He's too much of a coward to even ask questions." I stared at the page. I thought about my son, the boy I'd taught to build things, to fix engines, to solve problems with patience and precision. Somewhere along the way, I'd failed him. I'd raised a man who couldn't stand up to his own wife. "Where's Tyler now?" I asked. "He's staying with a friend in Tacoma. Brenner interviewed him yesterday. Tyler claims he didn't know the full extent of Amber's plan, says he thought she was just trying to protect the family assets during your legal trouble. Ryan didn't know about the planted evidence, but he also didn't stop her. He stood by and let it happen." I nodded slowly. "That's almost worse." Marcus didn't disagree. He closed the folder. "Amber's being held without bail. The prosecutor is charging her with fraud, forgery, conspiracy, unlawful imprisonment, and elder abuse. The trial is set for day 90, 20 days from now. With the fingerprint evidence, the video confession, the black market jewelry, and her history, the DA thinks this is a slam dunk." I sat back, letting the silence settle over us. Outside, a ferry horn sounded across Elliott Bay, low and mournful. She didn't just want the money, I said finally. She wanted to destroy everything. The house I built, the trust I set up for Tyler, my reputation. She wanted to erase me. Marcus met my eyes. But she didn't. You're still here, and we're going to make sure she never does this to anyone else. I nodded. For the first time in 70 days, I felt something close to hope. Day 83. I was home, really home, for the first time in nearly 3 months. The ankle monitor was gone. The charges had been dropped 2 weeks earlier, the same day Amber confessed. The house smelled like Ellie's lavender candles again, not stale air and silence. I'd spent the morning fixing the loose hinge on the kitchen cabinet, a task I'd been putting off for 6 months before this nightmare began. It felt good to hold a screwdriver again, to tighten screws and test the swing of a door. Small things, normal things. The doorbell rang just after 9 a.m. I set the screwdriver down and walked to the front door. Through the frosted glass, I could see a figure standing on the porch, hands in pockets, shoulders hunched. I opened the door. Tyler. He looked terrible. His face was pale, his eyes red-rimmed and swollen. He'd lost weight. His shirt hung loose on his frame, and his jeans were cinched tight with a belt. He didn't say anything at first. He just stood there staring at the doormat. "Dad," he said, finally, his voice cracking. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. We sat in the living room, the same room where Amber had once stood, with Howard Klein, demanding I sign away my life. Tyler sat on the edge of the couch, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. Ellie brought us coffee but didn't stay. She squeezed Tyler's shoulder as she passed a silent gesture of support and left us alone. "I found something," Tyler said. He pulled his phone from his pocket, tapped the screen a few times, and handed it to me. Text messages between Amber and Ryan from 8 months ago. I took the phone. The screen showed a conversation thread, the kind of casual back and forth that might have been about weekend plans or grocery lists. But it wasn't. "Amber, Tyler's a fool. The old man will be gone in 2 years anyway. We just need to be patient. Ryan, and if he doesn't die, Amber, then we speed up the process." I read the messages 3 times. Each time the words felt heavier. The old man will be gone. That was me. Speed up the process. That was my son's wife calmly discussing how to eliminate me. I handed the phone back. My hands were steady, but inside I felt like I was standing on a bridge that had just started to crack. "I didn't know," Tyler said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I swear to God, Dad, I didn't know she was planning this. I thought she was just trying to protect our future. She told me you were getting forgetful, that you were making bad decisions with money, that we needed to step in before you lost everything. I believed her." "Why?" Tyler looked up, his eyes brimming with tears. "Because I loved her. Because I wanted to believe the best in her. Because I was a coward." I didn't respond. I didn't trust myself to speak. Tyler wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "I found these messages 2 days ago. She'd deleted them from her phone, but they were still backed up to the cloud. I've been sitting in my apartment in Tacoma, reading them over and over, trying to figure out how I missed it, how I let this happen." "You didn't let it happen," I said quietly. "She manipulated you. That's what she does. But I should have seen it. I should have asked questions. When she told me to stay quiet, when she told me not to call you, when she told me you were dangerous, I should have known something was wrong, but I didn't. I just did what she said." I thought of the boy Tyler had been at 12, the one who'd asked me how to know if someone was good. I'd told him the truth. A good person stands up and tells the truth even when it hurts. I'd believed then that he would grow into that kind of man. Somewhere along the way I'd stopped believing it, but maybe I'd been wrong. "What are you going to do?" I asked. Tyler met my eyes. "I'm going to testify against her at the trial. Marcus says my testimony could make the difference, show that she coerced me, that she lied to both of us, that this wasn't just fraud, it was psychological manipulation. I'm scared, Dad, but I'm going to do it." For the first time in months, I felt something close to pride. "Good," I said. I reached across the couch and gripped his shoulder. "That takes courage." Tyler nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I'm so sorry, Dad, for everything." "I know," I said, "but we're going to fix it, together." That afternoon, Marcus arrived with a file box full of documents. He spread them across the dining room table like a general planning a campaign. Ellie made sandwiches. None of us ate them. "Now, here's what we have," Marcus said, ticking off items on a yellow legal pad. First, the fingerprint evidence. Amber's prints on the sticky side of the packing tape, irrefutable proof she packed that Father's Day box herself. Second, the video confession. Amber, standing in your kitchen, admitting she planted the money, forged the documents, called the police. Third, the fake power of attorney with the signature Haynes. Fourth, financial records showing Amber attempted to withdraw $80,000 from the offshore trust account and sell the house for $2.4 million. Fifth, Ryan Fletcher's testimony. Ryan's testifying, I asked. He cut a deal, plea bargain. He'll testify that Amber planned the fraud, recruited him to help launder money through his bar in Tacoma, and promised him half the proceeds. In exchange, he gets probation instead of prison. He claims he didn't know about the kidnapping or the planted evidence, just the financial scheme. Do you believe him? Marcus shrugged. Doesn't matter. His testimony corroborates the timeline and motive. Sixth, Tyler's testimony. He'll describe how Amber coerced him, showed him fake evidence of your supposed dementia, and threatened to leave him if he didn't cooperate. Seventh, we have records of Amber's prior victims, Amy Sutherland's trail of fraud across Oklahoma, Texas, and Nevada. 4 men, $300,000, all of them elderly, all of them vulnerable. I looked at the stack of evidence. It was overwhelming. It was also airtight. What are Amber's lawyers saying? I asked. They're scrambling. They'll try to argue that the video was taken without consent, that it's inadmissible. But Washington is a two-party consent state for private conversations. However, the video was taken in your house, which you own, and Amber had no reasonable expectation of privacy in a home she was attempting to steal. The judge will likely allow it. They'll also try to discredit Tyler, paint him as a scorned husband looking for revenge. But with the text messages and Ryan's testimony backing him up, that won't hold. Marcus closed the file box. The trial starts in 7 days. The prosecutor thinks we'll get a conviction on all counts: fraud, forgery, conspiracy, elder abuse, unlawful imprisonment. Amber's looking at 15 to 20 years. I nodded slowly. And then Marcus said, you rebuild. On the morning of day 90, I stood in front of the bedroom mirror, adjusting my tie. The navy suit Ellie had pressed the night before fit perfectly, a little looser than it had 3 months ago, but still respectable. My hair was combed, my face shaved. I looked older, thinner, but I was still standing. I whispered, today is the day justice is served. Behind me, Ellie appeared in the doorway, wearing a gray dress and pearl earrings. She walked over and squeezed my shoulder. Ready? She asked. I took a deep breath and nodded. Let's go. I walked through the metal detector at the King County Superior Courthouse at 8:45 a.m. My hands steady, but my heart racing. The building stood 12 stories tall, gray concrete and glass, with marble floors that echoed every footstep. Ellie held my left arm. Marcus carried a leather briefcase in his right hand. We took the elevator to the 5th floor, where courtroom 5B waited behind heavy oak doors. Inside, the room smelled like old wood and floor polish. Rows of wooden benches filled the gallery. A few reporters sat in the back, notebooks, open, cameras off. At the front, behind a raised bench, sat Judge Elena Rodriguez, 62 years old. Silver hair pulled into a tight bun, gold-rimmed glasses perched on her nose. She had a reputation for being fair but ruthless. Marcus had told me she didn't tolerate games. The prosecution table sat to the left. Sarah Collins, 40, in a black suit, her brown hair tied back, her expression calm and focused. The defense table sat to the right. Jonathan Pike, 45, a public defender in a gray suit that looked 2 sizes too big, shuffling papers with the nervous energy of a man who knew he was holding a losing hand. And at the defense table, wearing an orange jail uniform, sat Amber. She looked smaller than I remembered. Her hair was pulled into a tight ponytail, her face pale, her hands cuffed in front of her. When I walked in, she didn't look at me. She just stared at the table, jaw set, shoulders rigid. The jury filed in 12 men and women, a mix of ages and faces I would come to know over the next 6 hours. Juror number 3 was a woman in her 50s, a teacher from Bellevue. Juror number 7 was a retired firefighter from Renton. They looked serious, attentive, ready. Judge Rodriguez tapped her gavel. This court is now in session. The state of Washington versus Amber Sutton. Ms. Collins, you may proceed. Sarah Collins stood and walked to the center of the courtroom. Her voice was clear, calm, and steady. Your Honor, members of the jury, this is a case about betrayal, deliberate, calculated betrayal. The defendant, Amber Sutton, married into the Hayes family with one goal: to steal everything Warren Hayes had built over a lifetime. She fabricated evidence. She forged documents. She kidnapped an innocent man and held him against his will. And when she was caught, She tried to sell his house, his home, for $2.4 million. She clicked a remote. A screen behind the jury lit up with photographs: the Father's Day gift box, the stolen jewelry, the burglary tools, the stacks of cash. This is what Mr. Hayes found on Father's Day. A box delivered to his doorstep, filled with evidence designed to make him look like a criminal. The defendant planted it there. We know this because her fingerprints are on the packing tape, not the outside, but the sticky side. She sealed that box herself. Another click. A forensic photograph appeared, the clear strip of tape dusted black with ridges and loops clearly visible. Cyanoacrylate fuming, a specialized forensic technique, revealed these prints. They are a perfect match for Amber Sutton. Sarah continued. The defendant also forged a power of attorney document signing Mr. Hayes' name as Warren Haynes, a deliberate misspelling designed to give her legal control while invalidating the document if challenged later. She used this forgery to attempt the sale of a $2.4 million property she did not own. She paused, letting the weight of the words settle. And finally, we have video evidence of the defendant confessing to all of this. In her own words, Jonathan Pike shot to his feet. Objection, Your Honor. That video was recorded without my client's knowledge or consent. It violates Washington State's two-party consent law for recording private conversations. Judge Rodriguez looked at Sarah. Ms. Collins, Sarah didn't hesitate. Your Honor, Washington is indeed a two-party consent state under RCW 9.73.030. However, the video in question was recorded in Mr. Hayes' home, a home the defendant was actively attempting to steal. She had no reasonable expectation of privacy in a residence she was committing fraud against. Additionally, the video captures the defendant confessing to an ongoing crime. Under the ongoing crime exception, the recording is admissible. Judge Rodriguez studied the paperwork for a long moment. Then she looked up. I agree. The video documents a confession to an active criminal conspiracy occurring on the victim's property. The defendant had no legitimate expectation of privacy. The evidence is admissible. Objection overruled. Pike sat down defeated. Sarah clicked the remote. The screen went black. Then the video began. The courtroom went silent. Amber's voice filled the room, low, steady, cold. I watched the jury. Juror number 3. The teacher pressed a tissue to her eyes. Juror number 7. The firefighter leaned forward, his face tightening into a scowl of disgust. On the screen, Amber stood in my kitchen, holding a bowl of prohibited meat, my photograph propped beside it, and spoke. Hey, old man, this is your last meal. Next week you'll be gone, locked up in a psychiatric facility, or maybe just dead from a heart attack. This house, this money, it's all mine. I hid the $75,000 under your bed. I faked the paperwork. I called the cops. Ryan and I are leaving. Tyler, he's just a fool. The screen went dark. The silence that followed felt like a held breath. Judge Rodriguez looked at the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, you may take notes. We will continue. An hour later, Tyler was called to the stand. He walked to the witness box, slowly, his eyes on the floor. He wore a dark suit one I'd bought him 5 years ago for a job interview. He sat, placed his hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. Sarah Collins asked him simple questions. Tyler answered quietly, his voice shaking. I loved Amber. I believed her when she said my father was making bad financial decisions, that he was forgetful, that we needed to protect the family. I didn't know she was lying. I didn't know about the planted evidence, the fake documents, the kidnapping. I was blind. And now? Sarah asked. Tyler looked at me for the first time. I'm sorry, Dad. I should have seen it. I should have asked questions. I failed you. From the defense table, Amber's voice cut through the room like a blade. Tyler, you betrayed me. Judge Rodriguez's gavel slammed down. Order Ms. Sutton one more outburst and you will be removed from this courtroom. Do you understand? Damned. Taigbansagtas. Amber's lawyer pulled her back into her seat. She didn't say another word. At 2 p.m., the jury was dismissed for deliberation. Marcus Ellie and I sat in a waiting room down the hall drinking bad coffee from a vending machine. The minutes dragged. 3 hours turned into 3.5. At 5:30 p.m., the bailiff returned. The jury has reached a verdict. We filed back into the courtroom. The jury sat, faces unreadable. Judge Rodriguez looked at the foreman. Has the jury reached a verdict? The foreman, a man in his 60s, stood. We have, Your Honor. On the charge of fraud, how do you find guilty? On the charge of forgery, stars. Underwagt. Guilty. On the charge of unlawful imprisonments, EC 613 specific stomsatapkor. Guilty. On the charge of elder financial abuse. Guilty. Amber didn't move. She just stared straight ahead, her face blank. Judge Rodriguez looked at her. Amber Sutton, you have been found guilty on all counts. I hereby sentence you to 15 years in the Washington Corrections Center for Women. You will not be eligible for parole for the first 10 years. This court is adjourned. The gavel fell. Outside, reporters swarmed the courthouse steps. Cameras flashed. Voices shouted questions. I didn't answer. I just walked Ellie on one side, Marcus on the other. Tyler stood beneath a maple tree waiting. His face was pale, his eyes red and swollen. He stepped forward as I approached. He said quietly. Can I come home? I stood there for 10 seconds, the longest silence of my life. Then I said, not yet, but you can start rebuilding. Tyler nodded, tears streaming down his face. Okay, he whispered. Okay. I walked past him toward the parking lot toward whatever came next. 6 weeks after the trial, I stood in my backyard on a Saturday morning in October, repairing the wooden fence that had been sagging since July. The air smelled like wood smoke and wet leaves. Maple trees along the property line had turned gold and red, and the grass was still damp from the night's rain. I'd forgotten how good it felt to work with my hands again, to measure, to cut, to nail, to fix something broken. Ellie stepped out onto the back porch carrying a cardboard box. Warren, she called. You need to see this. I set the hammer down and walked over. The box was full of letters, white envelopes, yellow envelopes, some with handwritten addresses, some printed. There had to be 200 of them. They've been coming all week, Ellie said, from all over the country. I picked up the first one. The return address read, Margaret Thompson, Portland, Oregon. I opened it. Dear Mr. Hayes, I watched your story on the news. My daughter-in-law tried to take my house last year. I didn't have the courage to fight, but your story gave me hope. I hired a lawyer. I'm still in my home. Thank you. I picked up another. Robert Collins, Phoenix, Arizona. Mr. Hayes, my nephew, forged my signature on a reverse mortgage. I lost $200,000 before I figured it out. I reported him last month. Your courage gave me courage. And another. Linda Martinez, Miami, Florida. Mr. Hayes, my son, stole $50,000 from my retirement account. I reported him to the police last week. I never would have done it without hearing your story. Thank you for standing up. I stood there reading letter after letter, my chest tight. These weren't just thank you notes. These were confessions, pleas, stories of betrayal from children, grandchildren, spouses, caregivers. People who'd been too afraid, too ashamed, too tired to fight back, until they'd seen that someone else had. Ellie squeezed my shoulder. You did this, Warren. You gave them permission to fight. I nodded, unable to speak. That evening I sat at the kitchen table with Marcus and Sheriff Brenner. The letters were spread across the surface like a map of broken trust. There are 200 letters here, I said. 200 people who needed help and didn't know where to turn. How many more are out there? How many people just gave up? Marcus leaned back in his chair. Thousands. Elder financial abuse is one of the fastest growing crimes in the country. Most victims never report it because the abuser is family. Then we need to do something, I said. I have $75,000, the money Amber hid under my mattress. The court returned it to me after the trial. I want to use it to start a foundation. Brenner raised an eyebrow. What kind of foundation? One that helps people like the ones who wrote these letters. Free legal advice, a hotline, training for law enforcement. Something that says you're not alone, we can help. Marcus smiled. The Hayes Foundation for Elder Protection. I nodded. Exactly. Over the next 2 weeks we built it. Marcus handled the legal paperwork, nonprofit status, bylaws, tax exemptions. Brenner designed a security protocol and recruited 2 retired detectives to staff a 24/7 hotline 1-800-HAYES-HELP. We partnered with 3 law firms in Seattle who agreed to provide pro bono consultations for victims of elder abuse. We set up a website. We printed brochures. By mid-November, the Hayes Foundation was real. One afternoon, a month after I'd read those first letters, Ellie handed me a single envelope. It had no return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. Tyler. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Dad. I'm writing this from Tacoma. I've been going to therapy with Dr. Miller twice a week. He's helping me understand how I let Amber manipulate me, how I ignored the warning signs, how I failed you. I know saying I'm sorry isn't enough. Words are cheap, but I'm trying to do more than talk. I have been volunteering at the Tacoma homeless shelter 3 days a week. I serve meals, clean the kitchen, listen to people's stories. A lot of them have been betrayed by their families too. I'm learning what it means to rebuild trust, not just with you, but with myself. I know I don't deserve to be forgiven, but I'm gonna keep trying every day to be the kind of man you tried to raise me to be. I love you, Dad. Tyler. I set the letter down. My hands were shaking. Ellie sat beside me, her hand on my arm. Are you going to write back? She asked. I shook my head. Not yet. Why not? Because forgiveness isn't something you can do in a moment, I said. Forgiveness is a process. It's something you build one brick at a time, like a bridge. You don't just decide to forgive someone and then it's done. You have to see them change. You have to see them rebuild. And that takes time. Ellie nodded. So what do you do? I wait, I said. I watch. And when he's ready, when I'm ready, we'll start rebuilding together. A month later in early December, the second letter arrived. This one was thicker. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a photograph. The photo showed a small wooden footbridge spanning a narrow creek in a wooded park. The bridge was simple, 2 parallel beams, crossboards nailed tight handrails on both sides. The joinery was clean. The deck was level. It looked solid. It looked like something that would last. On the back of the photo in Tyler's handwriting, Dad, you taught me how to build. I'm learning again from the beginning. I stared at the photograph for a long time. I thought about the first bridge I'd ever built, a model suspension bridge for a 7th grade science fair made of toothpicks and string. My father had helped me. He'd taught me to measure twice, cut once, to test every joint before moving on. He'd taught me that building something right meant doing it slowly, carefully, honestly. Tyler had built this bridge, not for a contract, not for money, not because someone told him to. He'd built it because he needed to prove to me, to himself, that he could still create something good. I held the photo, my hands trembling, and for the first time in 6 months, I cried. Ellie sat beside me, her head on my shoulder. He's trying, Warren, she whispered. I know, I said, I know. 7.5 months after Father's Day, on a cold Saturday morning in January, I stood in my backyard rebuilding the fence that a winter storm had knocked down the week before. The air smelled like wet cedar and frozen earth. Seattle winters weren't harsh. No snow, no ice, but the wind and rain could tear things apart if you didn't build them strong enough. 3 sections of my fence had collapsed. The posts rotted through the boards, warped and split. I'd started at 8 a.m., pulling out the old posts, digging new holes, mixing concrete. My hands were numb, my back ached, but it felt good. Honest work. Work that had a clear beginning and a clear end. The doorbell rang at 9. I wasn't expecting anyone. I set the level down, wiped sawdust from my hands, and walked around the side of the house. Tyler stood on the front porch, hands in his jacket pockets, breath misting in the cold air. He looked thinner than I remembered his face drawn. His eyes tired, but there was something different about him. Something steadier. He was holding a wooden toolbox. I recognized it immediately. I'd made it for him when he was 10 years old, carved his name into the lid, Tyler Hayes. I'd filled it with a hammer, a screwdriver, a tape measure, a carpenter's pencil, the same tools my father had given me. Dad, Tyler said quietly, can I help? I stared at him for a long moment. Part of me wanted to say no. Part of me wanted to ask where he'd been for the last 7 months, why he thought showing up with a toolbox would fix everything. But another part of me, the part that had read his letters, that had seen the photograph of the bridge he'd built, knew that words wouldn't fix this. Only work would. Yeah, I said, grab that hammer. We worked in silence for the first hour. I showed him how to measure the post holes, how to check for level, how to mix the concrete so it set properly. He didn't ask questions. He just listened, nodded, and did what I told him to do. It reminded me of when he was a kid, back when he used to follow me around the garage, handing me tools, asking how things worked. At 10:30, Ellie came out with a pitcher of lemonade and 2 glasses. She set them on the back porch and smiled at both of us, but didn't say anything. She knew this moment was fragile, that the wrong word could shatter it. By 11, we'd set 4 new posts and started nailing the crossboards. Tyler's hands were steady. He measured twice before cutting, checked the level, after every board drove the nails straight. He'd learned, or maybe he'd remembered. A King County Sheriff's patrol car pulled into the driveway just before noon. I recognized the SUV. Sheriff Brenner stepped out still in uniform, his silver hair catching the winter sun. He walked over to the fence line and nodded at me, then at Tyler. Warren, he said. Tyler. Sheriff, I replied. Brenner looked at the fence, at the half-finished work, at the 2 of us standing side by side with hammers in our hands. "Looks good," he said. Then he turned to Tyler. "Son, don't waste this. Not everyone gets a second chance. My father didn't. He lost everything to a con artist, and by the time I figured out how to help him, it was too late. You've still got time. Don't waste it." Tyler's jaw tightened. He nodded, his eyes wet. "I won't, sir." Brenner clapped him on the shoulder, nodded to me, and walked back to his car. By 1 p.m., the neighbors started noticing. James and Sarah Henderson, the couple from across the street, walked past on their way back from the grocery store. James waved. "Warren looking good." Sarah stopped at the edge of the driveway. "Warren, we're so proud of you. You're a hero. What you did standing up like that, it gave a lot of people hope." I nodded, embarrassed. "Thank you, Sarah." She looked at Tyler, her expression softening. "It's good to see you two working together." Tyler didn't say anything. He just looked down at his boots. I knew what he was thinking. He was remembering the day they'd watched me get arrested, the day he'd stood silent while his wife destroyed everything. But Sarah didn't hold grudges. She just smiled and walked on. By 2 p.m., the fence was finished. 3 new sections, 12 boards each, every joint, tight, every post, plumb. Tyler stepped back, wiping sweat from his forehead despite the cold. "It looks good, Dad." I ran my hand along the top rail, testing the joints. It was solid. It would hold. I turned to Tyler. "You did good work today." He nodded, his throat tight. I set my hammer down and looked at him. "Tyler, forgiveness isn't forgetting. Forgiveness is rebuilding. Every nail is a step forward. Every board is a promise. I'm not there yet. I can't say I've forgiven you completely, but I'll give you the chance to rebuild. One day at a time, one board at a time." Tyler's face crumpled. He covered his eyes with one hand, his shoulders shaking. "Thank you, Dad," he whispered. "Thank you." I didn't hug him. It wasn't time for that yet. But I stood beside him, close enough that he knew I was there. Close enough that he knew the door wasn't closed. After a moment, he wiped his eyes and picked up his toolbox. "I'll come back next weekend," he said, "if you need help with anything." "I'll let you know," I said. He nodded, walked to his truck, and drove away. Ellie came out onto the porch, her arms crossed against the cold. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Tart," I said, "but okay." She smiled. "He's trying Warren." "I know," I said, "and that's enough, for now." A week later, an envelope arrived in the mail. Inside was an invitation printed on heavy cream-colored paper. "You are cordially invited to the grand opening ceremony, Hayes Foundation, for Elder Protection, Pioneer Square, Seattle, February 14th, 2025, 2 p.m. At the bottom, in Marcus's handwriting, "We've raised $500,000, Warren, and we have a commitment for $2 million over the next 3 years. You did this." I stared at the invitation for a long time, my hands trembling. $500,000. $2 million more on the way. A foundation that would help thousands of people. People like the ones who'd written me letters. People who'd been betrayed and didn't know where to turn. I thought about the fence Tyler and I had built. About the bridge he'd photographed. About the careful, patient work of putting broken things back together. I smiled. "Ellie," I called. "We're going to need new clothes for a ceremony." On the morning of February 14th, 9 months after Father's Day, I stood in front of the bedroom mirror, adjusting my tie for the second time. My hands were shaking. I'd given presentations to city councils, to investors, to engineering boards, but this was different. This wasn't about steel and concrete. This was about people, about trust, about proving that something good could come from something terrible. Ellie stepped into the room, wearing a gray dress and pearl earrings. She smiled. "You look handsome." "I look old," I said. "You look like someone who survived," she replied. "That's better than handsome." I nodded, took a deep breath, and picked up the index cards I'd written my speech on. I'd rewritten it 4 times. Nothing felt right. But Marcus had told me to speak from the heart, not from the cards. So I folded them and slipped them into my jacket pocket, hoping I wouldn't need them. The building stood on the corner of First Avenue and Yesler Way in Pioneer Square, 3 stories of red brick and arched windows. It had been a warehouse once, then an office, then vacant for a decade. Marcus had found it 6 months ago, negotiated the lease, and spent the foundation's first dollars restoring it. Now it gleamed in the winter sunlight, a bronze plaque beside the front door. Hayes Foundation for Elder Protection. A banner hung across the second floor, building bridges to justice. By 1:30, the street was packed. Over 300 people had come. I recognized some of them, Margaret Thompson, the teacher from Portland, who'd written me after the trial. Robert Collins, the man from Phoenix, whose nephew had stolen $200,000. Linda Martinez from Miami, who'd reported her son to the police. They stood in clusters on the sidewalk, talking quietly, their faces a mix of hope and grief. Inside, the main hall had been cleared and filled with rows of folding chairs. A podium stood at the front, flanked by the Washington state flag and the American flag. Marcus was there, shaking hands, directing volunteers. Sheriff Brenner stood near the back, arms crossed, watching the crowd, with the calm vigilance of a man who'd spent 30 years protecting people. Ellie squeezed my hand. "Are you ready?" I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. At 2 p.m., Marcus stepped to the podium and tapped the microphone. The room went quiet. "Thank you all for coming," Marcus said. 9 months ago, Warren Hayes was arrested for a crime he didn't commit. His daughter-in-law framed him, forged documents, and tried to steal everything he'd built. But Warren didn't give up. He fought back. And today, because of his courage, thousands of people will have a place to turn when they're betrayed by the people they trust most. He gestured to the side of the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, Governor Rebecca Miller." The governor was 55, with short brown hair and a no-nonsense expression. She shook Marcus's hand and stepped to the microphone. "Mr. Hayes," she said, looking directly at me, "you turned your personal tragedy into a lifeline for thousands. In just 6 months, the Hayes Foundation has assisted over 2,000 seniors across Washington state. You've shown us that justice isn't just about punishment, it's about protection, prevention, and rebuilding trust. On behalf of the state of Washington, thank you." The room erupted in applause. I stood my legs unsteady and walked to the podium. I looked out at the crowd. 300 faces. Some I knew, most I didn't. But they were all here for the same reason they'd been betrayed, and they wanted to believe that betrayal didn't have to be the end of the story. I cleared my throat. "I'm an engineer," I began. "I've built bridges for 40 years. Bridges aren't walls, bridges are connections. They link two places that were once separated. They carry people across gaps they couldn't cross alone." I paused, looking down at the podium, then back up. 9 months ago, someone I trusted tried to destroy everything I'd built. She planted evidence. She forged documents. She tried to steal my home. But she didn't just attack me, she attacked my family, my reputation, and my faith in people. The room was silent. "I could have given up," I said. "A lot of people do. They're tired. They're ashamed. They think no one will believe them. But I had people who stood beside me, my wife Ellie, my lawyer Marcus, Sheriff Brenner, and all of you who wrote me letters, who told me your stories, who reminded me that I wasn't alone." I felt my voice crack, but I pushed through. "Today, this foundation is a bridge between people who've been hurt and the justice they deserve, a bridge between isolation and community, a bridge between betrayal and healing." I looked down at the index cards in my pocket, then left them there. I didn't need them. "Forgiveness isn't silence," I said. "Forgiveness isn't pretending it never happened. Forgiveness is rebuilding, but only when the other person has earned it. Only when they've proven through action that they're willing to change." I saw Ellie in the front row, tears streaming down her face. I saw Marcus nodding slowly. And then in the back row, I saw someone I hadn't expected. Tyler. He was wearing a dark suit, standing beside a young woman I didn't recognize. She was holding a clipboard. Tyler met my eyes, and for the first time in 9 months, I saw something I'd been waiting for. Not shame, not guilt, but quiet determination. I finished my speech. "This foundation will help thousands of people, and maybe one day it will help. The people who hurt us realize that stealing from the vulnerable isn't just a crime, it's a betrayal of everything that makes us human. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for believing that trust can be rebuilt one brick at a time." The applause was deafening. After the ceremony, people lined up to shake my hand, to tell me their stories, to thank me. I listened to each one, shook every hand, and tried to remember that this wasn't about me. It was about them. An hour later, as the crowd thinned, Tyler approached. He looked nervous, his hands in his pockets. "Dad," he said quietly, "can we talk?" I nodded. We stepped outside into the cold February air. The street was quieter now, the sun low on the horizon. "I've been working here," Tyler said. "For the past 6 months, Marcus hired me as the community outreach coordinator. I didn't tell you, because I wanted to prove I could do it, that I could help people instead of hurting them. I've been organizing workshops, training volunteers, connecting victims with lawyers. I wanted you to see that I've changed, not just in words but in work." I stared at him, speechless. "I know it doesn't fix what I did," Tyler continued, his voice shaking. "I know I let you down, but I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure I don't let anyone else down. I promise you that, Dad. I'll make you proud." I stood there for a long moment, the weight of 9 months pressing down on me, the betrayal, the anger, the slow, painful work of rebuilding. And then I did something I hadn't done since the day he'd testified at the trial. I pulled him into a hug. Tyler's shoulders shook. He wrapped his arms around me and cried, "I'm so sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry." "I know," I said, "and you're doing it. You're making me proud." We stood there on the sidewalk, father and son, rebuilding what had been broken. That evening, Ellie and I stood on our back deck in Bellevue watching the sun set over Lake Washington. The sky was streaked with pink and gold, the water still and glassy. Ellie leaned against the railing, her hand in mine. "You know," she said quietly, "I don't think this story is over. I think it's only just beginning." I nodded, squeezing her hand. She was right. This wasn't an ending. It was a bridge to whatever came next. 1 year, 365 days since I'd opened that box on Father's Day and watched my life collapse. I sat in my home office on a Sunday morning in June, the windows open to let in the smell of fresh-cut grass and blooming roses. A journal lay open on the desk in front of me, the same journal I'd started keeping the week I was released from jail. I picked up my pen and wrote, "A year ago, I didn't know if I'd survive. I didn't know if I'd be free or if I'd spend the rest of my life fighting to prove I wasn't a thief. Today I'm sitting in my house, the house I built with my own hands, and I'm free. More than free. I have my wife, I have my son, rebuilding what was broken. And I have a foundation that's helped over 2,000 people find justice." I set the pen down and looked out the window. The fence Tyler and I had built in January was still standing, weathered by spring rain, but solid. Beyond it, Lake Washington shimmered in the morning sun. I thought about Amber. She was still in prison, Washington Correction Center for Women, a facility 2 hours south in Gig Harbor. She wouldn't be eligible for parole for another 9 years. I hadn't visited her. I didn't plan to. Some betrayals are too deep to reconcile. Some bridges once burned aren't meant to be rebuilt. Ryan Fletcher was out on probation, raising his son Liam in Tacoma. Marcus told me Ryan was working at a restaurant, attending a single-father support group, trying to piece together a life. I hadn't met him. I didn't know if I ever would, but I knew he was trying, and maybe that was enough. And Tyler had finished a year of therapy. He'd been working full-time at the Hayes Foundation for 6 months now, no longer a volunteer, but a paid community outreach coordinator. He called me twice a month. He sent letters every week. He was dating someone, a social worker named Sarah, 30 years old, kind and steady. He hadn't asked me to meet her yet, and I hadn't pushed. There was time. The foundation had grown beyond anything I'd imagined. 2,000 seniors helped, 200 calls a week to the hotline. 2 new offices opened, one in Spokane, one in Vancouver. 150 volunteers trained, 25 pro bono lawyers, 10 retired detectives. We'd recovered over $3 million in stolen assets, secured 12 convictions, and prevented countless cases from ever reaching the courtroom. It wasn't just a foundation anymore. It was a movement. A week earlier, a letter had arrived. I recognized Tyler's handwriting. "Dad, it's been a year. A year since everything fell apart, and a year since we started rebuilding. I know I don't deserve to ask for this, but I'd like to come see you on Father's Day. Not to celebrate, I don't think I've earned that yet, but to work, to help, to show you that I'm still trying. Can I come?" Tyler. I'd read it 3 times, then sat down and written a reply in my own hand. Tyler. "Yes, 10 a.m. We'll rebuild the front fence." Dad. At 9:50 on Father's Day morning, I stood in the front yard surveying the fence. It wasn't in bad shape, just a few loose boards, a couple of posts that needed reinforcing. But it needed attention, and that was enough. A truck pulled into the driveway. Tyler stepped out wearing jeans and a faded Seahawks t-shirt. He looked healthier than he had in February, his face fuller, his eyes clearer. He was carrying something under his arm, a wooden picture frame, old and scarred. He walked over and handed it to me without a word. I looked at the photograph inside. It was us, Warren, Ellie, and Tyler, standing in front of this house 30 years ago, right after we'd finished building it. I was 39, holding a hammer. Ellie was 35, her arm around Tyler's shoulders. Tyler was 7, grinning at the camera, his hands wrapped around a toy level I'd given him for his birthday. The frame had been cracked, a long split down the right side, but Tyler had repaired it. The wood had been glued, sanded, and refinished. It wasn't perfect. You could still see the seam. But it held. "I found this in a box in my apartment," Tyler said quietly. "I broke it a long time ago. I fixed it last month. I thought you'd want it back." I stared at the photograph, my throat tight. "Thank you," I managed. Tyler nodded. "So, the fence—" "Yeah," I said. Let's get to work. We worked in silence for the first hour just like we had in January. Measure, cut, nail, check the level, repeat. The rhythm was familiar, comforting, the kind of work that didn't need words. By 11, Ellie came out with lemonade and sandwiches. She set them on the porch railing and smiled at both of us. "You two look like a team," she said. Tyler glanced at me uncertain. I nodded. "We're getting there." By noon, the fence was finished. Every board tight, every post, plumb, every joint solid. Tyler stepped back, wiping sweat from his forehead. "It looks good, Dad." I ran my hand along the top rail, testing it. It didn't move. "It does." I turned to him. Tyler, family isn't something that never breaks. Family is knowing how to rebuild after the breaking. The strongest bridges aren't the ones that never shake. They're the ones designed to withstand the shaking. They flex, they absorb the stress, and they stand because they were built to last. Tyler's eyes filled with tears. "I'm trying to be that, Dad. I'm trying to be strong enough to last." "I know you are," I said, "and you're doing it." This time when I hugged him, it didn't feel like forgiveness. It felt like home. That evening, the three of us stood on the back deck, Warren, Ellie, and Tyler, watching the sunset over Lake Washington. The sky was streaked with orange and gold, the water reflecting the light like a mirror. The air smelled like cedar and roses. No one spoke. We didn't need to. I thought about the 2,000 people the foundation had helped. I thought about the letters still arriving every week, the calls to the hotline, the lives being rebuilt one case at a time. I thought about Amber alone in a cell and wondered if she'd ever understand what she'd destroyed. I thought about Ryan trying to raise his son. I thought about Tyler standing beside me, finally steady. And I thought about the lighthouse metaphor Marcus had used at the grand opening. "You're a lighthouse, Warren," he'd said. "You guide people through the dark." I wasn't a lighthouse. I was just an old man who'd refused to give up. But maybe that was enough. Ellie squeezed my hand. Tyler stood on my other side, his hands in his pockets, his face peaceful. "This isn't the end," I said quietly. "This is the beginning of something new." Tyler nodded. "I know, Dad." Ellie smiled. "Good." The sun dipped below the horizon, and the sky turned from gold to deep blue. The three of us stood there silent together as the first stars appeared. Looking back on this family story, I realized the hardest lesson wasn't about surviving family betrayal. It was about accepting that the people we trust most can hurt us deepest. If you're reading this, if you're living through your own family story of deception and pain, don't do what I did. Don't stay silent out of shame. Don't wait until the evidence is overwhelming to ask for help. Don't sacrifice your peace trying to protect someone who's already chosen to destroy you. Family betrayal cuts deeper than any stranger's crime because it poisons the foundation we've spent decades building. But here's what I learned. Betrayal doesn't define you, your response does. I could have given up. I could have let bitterness consume me. Instead, I chose to build bridges for others who'd been pushed off cliffs by the people they loved. God gave me a second chance when I had every reason to quit. He surrounded me with people like Ellie Marcus and Sheriff Brenner, reminders that not everyone is broken, that goodness still exists, even when trust feels impossible. Faith didn't erase the pain, but it gave me the strength to rebuild. My advice: protect yourself legally before the crisis hits. Document everything. Trust your instincts when someone's behavior changes. And remember, family betrayal isn't your fault. You didn't cause it by being too trusting. You didn't deserve it by being vulnerable. Forgiveness is possible, but only when it's earned through action, not demanded through guilt. Some bridges can be rebuilt, others need to stay burned, and that's okay. This family story isn't just mine. It belongs to every person who's been lied to, stolen from, or erased by someone who claimed to love them. You're not alone. Reach out, fight back, survive. And then, when you're ready, help someone else cross the gap. Thank you for walking this journey with me to the very end. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below. What would you do if you found yourself in Warren's situation? How would you handle betrayal from someone you trusted completely? Your perspective matters, and I genuinely want to know. If this story resonated with you emotionally, please consider subscribing so you won't miss future stories that explore the complexity of trust, family, and resilience. A quick note: while inspired by real-world issues surrounding elder abuse and financial exploitation, certain narrative elements have been dramatized for storytelling purposes. If this content doesn't align with your preferences, feel free to explore other videos on the channel that might suit you better. Remember, you are never alone. If you or someone you know needs help, resources are available. Don't stay silent.